welcome to the Cantina Chatter Podcast. My name is Victoria, and I will be your guide on this adventure through toys, collectibles, and film discussion. So this is kind of a bittersweet episode for me. If you've been following along with the news here on Cantina Chatter Podcast, as well as social media, then you probably know that this is the final episode of Cantina Chatter Podcast in its current format. We will be relaunching the show on June 10th. It is going to have a Star Wars focus. There will be segments on each show that will be rotating. The segments won't necessarily be on every episode, but we will have segments for film, TV, music, books, comic books, theme parks, games, fashion, and collecting. Of course, that's going to be always a big part of what we do here at Victoria's Canteen is focus on toys and collecting. And I will have dedicated co-hosts for each of those segments. I will be announcing those this week on Twitter, so stay tuned there to see who's going to be co-hosting each of these different segments on a Cantina Chatter Podcast going forward. Each of these co-hosts will be rotating for film. So my film co-host will actually be all of these co-hosts in a rotating fashion. So really looking forward to relaunching the show and with the new focus on all things Star Wars. It's a really exciting thing. Of course, I am going to miss doing the Jurassic World episodes, but I'm still doing them. You just have to go over to Collect Jurassic World. It's the podcast that we launched earlier this month with Tim from Collect Jurassic. I've been having a blast doing it. We've recorded 3 episodes so far, and you can get that from your favorite podcast provider or listen to it on YouTube over on the Collect Jurassic YouTube channel. And any other toy type stuff that we've talked about here on the show is going to be more relegated to the Victoria's Cantina YouTube channel going forward. So the reason I say this is a bittersweet episode is that, this is the final episode of the podcast in its current format. And who better to do that with than ToyShiz? If you're on Instagram and you're a toy collector, you probably know ToyShiz. I mean, he's a huge Instagram account who provides the latest up-to-date. I mean, it's almost like minute-by-minute news on toys, like where toys are popping up, where you can find them online, news and tidbits about stuff. He does great coverage at toy events. I actually got to meet him last year at San Diego Comic-Con, and we've had him on the show before. And his knowledge on toys is expansive, so that's always been a huge, really important thing to me on Cantina Chatter Podcast. Being able to talk toys, and this guy can talk toys, so we're going to talk toys. So I hope you like toys. I hope you're a child of the 80s and 90s, because if you are, this episode is going to be for you. There's a lot of nostalgia here. We're coming for your nostalgia, so you better cling tight to it, because that's basically what this episode is. It's just nonstop nostalgia for us 80s and 90s kids. So really excited about everything you're going to hear in this episode. It's a long episode. It's the longest one we've ever done. So if you have the time to listen to the whole thing, I think you're really going to enjoy it. I hope you're going to enjoy it. And so let's go and get right to it. Final episode of Cantina Chatter Podcast in its current format, talking about all the toy lines we never got around to. ToyShiz, welcome back to the Cantina.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's great to have you, because for the particular show that we are covering in this episode, I needed somebody that was very knowledgeable, lifelong toy collector like me, and who better to bring on for this episode than you. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for thinking of me. You've made the complete wrong choice, but I'll try my best. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so throughout the history of the Cantina Chatter Podcast, we've looked at different toy lines, of course, with a very heavy emphasis on Star Wars and Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, but we've touched on a lot of different things, and I thought that we should take an extensive look at all the toy lines that I never got around to, because there's a ton of them, and before the show switches its focus to being a Star Wars only show in June, I thought that this was the only time really to make this happen. So so I'm really excited to talk about all these lines, because I haven't probably even thought about some of these lines in years. And we have a pretty expansive list. And I'm actually going to add Independence Day to it because I forgot about Independence Day.
Oh my God, yeah, I have the big giant thing that its face opens and the little, yeah, how do we forget that?
Yeah, so that's going on the list. I'm going to put it between Power Rangers and VR Troopers.
Oh my God, like as soon as you said that, I'm like, do you remember what they used to pack in with those things?
Oh my
okay,
God.
we'll wait till we...
It's going to be so good.
Keep the listeners on the edge of their seat. Like, what did they pack in? I got to listen to the whole podcast now. Let's put that at the very end.
Totally. Yeah, and just quite a few different toy lines, and I'm really excited to get right down to business and go over these. So the way this is going to work is we're going to set a timer. That way we don't run too long with any one of these toy lines because there are quite a few we want to get through. Mm-hmm. And we're basically going to be focusing on the toy lines that were important to us growing up, the toy lines that, we either collected or, had toys of that were gifted to us as kids. And we're going to kind of go from, late 80s into, kind of mid to late 90s, I think. So.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah,
I'm excited. I'm excited. This is going to be fun.
Totally. And I did post on Twitter the other day that we were going to be doing this episode. And basically just to get ready because we're coming for your nostalgia. So hope everybody's prepared.
All right. This is going to be good. Like I'm expecting a lot of people to be like, what? They made a toy line about that? I'd be like, oh yeah. There was something for everybody back in the 90s.
Oh yeah. You'll have to skew a little bit older millennial to probably know some of these for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to set the timer for the very first segment. Here we're going to be talking about the Real Ghostbusters.
It's like the best. It's the best one.
Oh man, yeah, we're starting off with the best, and this is the first toy line that I actively collected. I guess. I mean, I was really little. I mean, when this toy line was out, but for whatever reason, my family would always buy me Ghostbusters, aunts, uncles, grandparents. They would buy various ghosts or the figures of the main four characters. And it might still to this day be the biggest thing other than Star Wars that I ever had. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what can you tell us about the Real Ghostbusters?
So it's funny. I am a Ghostbusters fanatic, and when I say Ghostbusters, I actually always mean real Ghostbusters because I was born about a year too late, and then by the time I was old enough to kind of function and play with toys, it was all Real Ghostbusters at that time. So I had the cartoon first, and then there's a movie, and then Ghostbusters 2 came out in what was that, 87, 88, something like that. And they were just the I don't know, it was something that my parents were into, they loved that I loved it, and the fact that it's the paranormal stuff, and the ghosts were so creative, and all the little functions and scare tactics and everything that they put in, they were wild toys.
Yeah.
And it's stuff that I don't think, I would think they could get away with it, but I don't see kids it was some of the ones were dang, it's a skeleton where his eyes are popping out. Granny Gross was one of my favorite ones. Yeah.
The toilet monster.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Fearsome Flush and the Haunted Humans. And
yes.
My favorite one was Wicked Wheelie, where it was a motorcycle guy and his face flipped out. He had this horrifying purple-green thing inside. And then his motorbike turned into this big red monster. And it was a twofer kind of thing. And man, those toys, they broke real easily back. I tore them apart. But the fact that they never made the ghosts from the actual cartoon always bothered me. And I think that bothers everybody that ever liked the Real Ghostbusters. But you sure had a lot of ghosts to, play with. And they had the car and the firehouse.
Yeah.
You were set. All you needed was those anyways. So
yeah,
and slime.
I never had the firehouse, but we did have the Ecto one. And in fact, I remember, I think they must have been on clearance or something, because one day my mom brought home 3 or 4 of them, and what we should have done, what she should have done is said, okay, open one of them, but, I'm going to put the rest away for 30 years.
Yeah.
And because, what are those like $500 now to get them boxed?
They're close. Even it's funny. I think as far as what things are worth, Ghostbusters wide, it tends to fluctuate. And I think people are really like, especially after that last Ghostbusters movie they tried to do, it's like with the announcement of Ghostbusters 3, I feel like people are starting to generate that interest again. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, I should get my old toys, and I'm really, really hoping that the new toy line takes off next year.
Yeah.
And
that'd be great.
Let's say fingers crossed. You know, they're going to do something, but I hope they do something real Ghostbusters-ish. That would be amazing. So,
for sure. Now, I know I had a ton of these toys. I had a bunch of the figures. The figures, of course, like the main cast, you know, they had the proton packs. They had the little wand sort of neutrino, you know, blasts that would come out of them. And, you know, I wish I knew where all of these figures were. I assumed for a while that they were still somewhere in my parents' house, but it seems like they're nowhere to be found. So I don't know what happened to them, because they still have a lot of my childhood stuff, but these, for whatever reason, just, you know, didn't survive. But I did want to highlight something that I think is pretty cool, because when I was maybe in pre-K or so, I know, you know, female Ghostbusters in 2016 was a big thing, but when I was about pre-K, I think I was in pre-K, my mom and my grandmother actually made me a custom like Ghostbusters like jumpsuit.
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
It even had like my name, like Victoria, like on the pocket. And yeah, so maybe I was the first female Ghostbuster.
You know what? That, like, for kids, and I remember kids in my neighborhood growing up, we were all about the real Ghostbusters. And a lot of times I didn't even know what toys were out because I got them as gifts. I have vague memories of kind of going into stores. It wasn't until like later on, right when the line was kind of sort of dying out, where I remember going to KB Toys, and I mean, they were like 3 for $6. They couldn't get rid of these things. They had walls of old real Ghostbusters stuff. And that's when they did the more obscure Ghostbusters and Ghosts and stuff like that that kind of finalized the line. But yeah, kids in my neighborhood, they'd show up, be like, check out this one kid, always got everything. Like, you know what I mean? He's like, check, it's a head that shoots its brains out. And I was like, how'd you get that? And he's like, here's Ecto 2. It's the helicopter. But, you go over, you made your own jumpsuit. I remember finding like snow boots, and I had the proton pack. And yeah, we were all kinds of nerdy back then.
Yeah, they were great toys. And I still remember very vividly waking up on Christmas morning, 1988, and underneath the tree was, the proton pack. And the package on this thing, when you look at it now, it just looks freaking amazing. It's really too bad that, I mean, I'd love to have like a lot of this line like package because it just looks great. One thing that I didn't have was the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. For whatever reason, we had tons of these lying around the house, but we didn't have the Marshmallow Man. So I actually remedied this a few years ago. I got a boxed one, carded on eBay, and I have that. So
very cool.
It took 30 years, but finally got him.
I have my old Ghostbusters still. I have the Firehouse and the Ecto one. I don't like, it's like one of those toy lines where if I go to like a rummage sale, or if I'm scouring eBay and I see some deal or something like that, I'll pick them up. But it's interesting because overseas, like in Europe, they had some like exclusive kind of ones. They had goblins and things that I had never heard of. Like, even when I was a little kid, getting older, I was like, what the heck are these things? And they were a little bit more, I feel like, more monstrous, more, weird and stuff. And,
sure.
I have one out of like that kind of set. So that's something I need to remedy. I collect these things again casually here and there, but there's such nostalgic memories.
Yeah, they're so good. I was back home over Thanksgiving last year, 2018, and my brother-in-law, I guess, I didn't realize he was a big Ghostbusters fan as a kid, and he had picked up on eBay, I think it was I want to say it was Peter Venkman. He had him like carded. He picked up like a brand new packaged one, and
oh wow.
I was so envious of it. But did you have the trap?
I did, and the only reason like what I was saying, like a little kid in my neighborhood, got all this stuff. I'd get all my stuff from garage sales or going around with my grandfather, something like that. And we were out one day. He took me out in the morning, and we got out of a garage sale, and the Ghostbusters trap was sitting right there. Nice. And I was like, oh, like, I grabbed it, and I remember my grandfather's like, how much is it? And the guy goes like $5. He's like, I'll give you $1. And the guy's like, $2. I was like, oh man, just like anything, just please let me get this. And the
That's
ghost
awesome.
trap, like everything. Like that was like the actual Ghostbusters pack and the gun and the ghost popper and the trap, they all hooked together, and you could put the trap on the backpack, and
so good. Yeah, just like the playability of this line was absolutely insane. And one thing I do want to note about the trap is that I remember I had it, and I think we were at like a doctor's office, maybe with my grandmother or something, and I had it with me, and I was sitting on the floor, kind of just keeping to myself playing, and I remember some guy just walked by and he stepped on the handle of the trap and broke it, and he didn't even apologize or anything. And I remember like telling my grandma, he didn't even say sorry.
I would have been like, dude, you're buying me a new one. I want no.
Yeah, such a bummer, because I'm pretty sure that is one thing that actually my parents might still have, but yeah, it's that toy line was freaking awesome. And like you were talking about all the ghosts, the ones that also stick out in my mind were like the Hollywood sort of monsters, like the Dracula and Frankenstein.
Yeah. It's funny that they made those with like you're saying, the Universal Monsters type thing. And like I remember talking to somebody, and the joke was like, oh yeah, they made the Quasimodo character.
Yes, they did.
And it's like, oh, this poor guy's not really like a ghost or a monster, just a guy that like was unfortunately born wrong, and people are like laughing about it. I was like, hey, you got the werewolf, you got Dracula, you got the zombie, and then this poor guy.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. It's like he's like, I'm not a ghost. Like, please, like, don't.
Yeah.
It was one of the good ghosts from the cartoon, something like that. Now.
Yeah, but all the role play was definitely great too. Like they had like projectors, and they had like things that the slime would, or not slime, but like the beams would spin around. And
well, dang it. We'll just make this a full Ghostbusters episode.
We easily could do that. How do we turn this off? Oh goodness! All right, yeah, we
had the containment unit alarm from the.
That's what it sounds like. That's exactly what it sounds like. All right, so I hate to move on from Ghostbusters because there's so much nostalgia there, but nonetheless, we could be here for a week talking about all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
So
no, let's keep this going. Let's see how much more weird stuff we can dig up here.
All right, so the next one is going to be Batman 1989, which originally was Toy Biz. And then that got transferred over to Kenner at some point shortly thereafter.
Yeah, that was an interesting line, because if I'm not mistaken, I think the Kenner stuff and the Toy Biz stuff was on the shelf at the same time. If I'm not it was like they all looked the same anyways. But I can't. I mean, I'm trying to think back, like way back when, because I remember getting the Batwing, and I didn't have the Batmobile from the original Batman movie, but I had Batman Returns. And then, of course, I had the what's his name? The Bat Rope Batman. The one with the belt, with the yellow belt. You pull the little thing out, and Bob the Goon.
Yeah, that was actually my very first Batman figure, the one that had the rope that was going into his waist.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I actually still have that to this day, and it still has like the belt attached and everything. And I still remember there was a place called Video Stop where you would rent, VHS, big clunky cassette tapes.
Oh yeah.
And I remember this place. The building's still there. I was actually there back in November, but now it's a Tuesday morning. But yeah, it's back then you could rent videos at Video Stop, and you would pull the little chips that were held on by Velcro off the cassette tapes and take them up to the desk, and they would give you like the tape. But I remember they sold Batman toys there. That was my very first one. My dad bought that for me. I think I must have been like four or so. I still have it to this day. It's a fabulous figure, and that was one of the Toy Biz releases, which I think for Toy Biz I also had Christmas morning. I remember waking up and getting the Batwing, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And it had like pincers at the front where you could like swoop down and pick up like the Joker.
Yeah, I think that was on the box too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the boxes on these were like gold, right? They were like gold and like the Batman film lettering on them, and
yeah, I think so. So that's why I'm like confusing. If am I thinking Kenner? But I think you're right, because I do remember the Batwing and the Joker. But yeah.
Yeah, and the Batmobile that Toy Biz didn't even have it was like a convertible. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it didn't have a top to it, right? It just,
It didn't.
it was the weirdest thing.
It had a big trunk though, with a lot of space in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that. I think my parents actually got that maybe like at a garage sale or something, because I know I did have that, but it wasn't like brand new. But then yeah, so Kenner at some point took over this line shortly after it was released. I think maybe like within 6 months or something by Toy Biz.
Yeah.
And do you know why that happened or any of the background on that?
I think it was that it was just a rights switch, right? It wasn't that they weren't happy with what's going on, but the toy line wasn't selling. Was that what it was?
Because they were doing like the superheroes line too, weren't they? Toy Biz.
Yeah, Toy Biz had the Marvel superheroes, and then they did it into DC super. Didn't they combine them? Yeah, for a little bit or for a second, I forgot.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to think like that kind of. It's funny, that kind of era with all like you had Batman Returns, and then you had the Toy Biz thing, and then it all kind of gets like jumbled together. I'm trying to think of all the card art and stuff.
But I think most people would probably agree that the toy line was immensely better under Kenner. Like the likenesses on the Batman figures and the various characters were just a lot more film accurate, and I think the overall quality was probably held up a little bit better. But they did quite a few vehicles too. They did like the Batmobile, and it was actually like a really nice Batmobile. It was a lot more proportionate, and you could fit your Batman figure in it, and it had like the missiles and everything. I never had this, but it was just a pretty incredible toy, and I think it's it's still like to this day one of the most sought after like items out there for this Kenner line.
Yeah, it's kind of like Hasbro doing Jurassic Park, and then Mattel was like, "Nah, we can do it. Don't worry about it."
Yeah, exactly. And
I totally know what you mean.
Yeah, and they even did like they did have a playset, didn't they? They had like the Bruce Wayne like Wayne Manor playset, I think.
Yeah, it was a weird thing because the Toy Biz one was, it's like you think of what Toy Biz did like later on in the 90s, and to see like the original Batcave, it was really Adam West-ish and not
true.
Like with like what Kenner did with that full like Wayne Manor like fold out spread thing, and they brought that out for I think they did it for the first Batman, but I know they really pushed for Batman Returns. I can't remember, but I mean they had breakaway windows, and then you had like they'd flip it over, and it had the Bat computer and the Bat station. Then you had like a Penguin kind of hideout, and that was a multifunctional playset for kids. I love that thing. That was amazing.
Yeah. And they actually reused that Wayne Manor playset, I believe, like for all 4 of the original Batman films, as I recall.
I think they did, yeah. And I want to say that they did it for Batman the Animated Series too, but I think I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I don't quite remember, but
there
were quite a few vehicles, and most of them weren't even in the film. Like motorcycles and little bat copters and just random things.
Yeah, I had something. It was so wild. It looked like an airship where the front of it would open up. You put Batman in there, but if you it was kind of like a handheld thing almost. You push the button in the back, and the wings would kind of pop out. It kind of looked like a UFO almost thing. But I loved that thing. It had a front piece. You push the button, it'd shoot off the front missile and stuff. And toys were a lot of fun back then.
They were, and Batman, of course, had multiple costumes that you didn't see in the film in various colors.
Yeah,
and like a silver costume, and he had like a gray one, and then he had like a blue one and a neon costume, and
they did everything under the sun with that. It was like Arctic Freeze Batman, and Hopscotch Batman.
And I would always lose the capes on these. I remember like on the Batman figures, the capes would just disappear. And my grandmother, she was really into like sewing and stuff. And she would like buy black cloth and make replacement capes for me.
You know what I did? Because I was like, I liked the way, even as a kid, like the way the cape would drape over Batman's shoulders. And the capes weren't like big enough. So I took 2 capes and put one on the front, one on the, like clipped it, those little clips that sometimes would break, but I just had like full blown like 2 capes going off, and I remember like displaying him like that, and I was like, Dad, that's cool. Like he's doing the whole Dark Knight brooding thing.
Yeah. Yeah, such a good line, and it's cool. It's funny because you can buy a lot of these figures pretty inexpensively, like on eBay. It's mostly like the vehicles, like the Batmobile or the Batwing that are expensive, but like you can get a lot of the figures, especially like if you get Batman like in one of his weird costumes, like they're not that expensive.
Yeah, it's funny. I see those every once in a while. At like a state sale. No, that was like a few months ago. But like you're saying, those more obscure Batman ones, they're always, those are the ones you find.
Absolutely.
You never find the good ones because everyone's just like, what is this? Like, I didn't want to get like fractal armor Batman. I wanted just Batman.
Yeah, and it was a pretty diverse lineup, and I think one of the things I remember very fondly about this line too is that the commercials, as with a lot of toy lines, back during this era, you'd have very prominent commercials for these lines that you would see during Saturday morning cartoons or in the afternoon when you got off school.
Yeah.
And, they would really like sell you on these things. They would show you like, like the Batwing or something, like just kind of flying and then taking out, the Joker. And then, they really like hooked you early on. And I think that's why we're still here talking about this stuff, all these years later.
Seriously, no, the marketing campaigns back then was like, make these exciting, put a guitar riff in there, like the explosions, and the kids that were always playing in the commercials were always like to the extreme, they were just like, they'd be like, Batman flies in off, the Gotham rooftops, and the kid would like jam through a bunch of bricks and blocks and stuff like that, and you'd see that and you're like, I just totally watched this cartoon. I need these toys to do what they're doing.
Exactly.
Right now. And
they would change their voices too, like, I'll get you next time, Joker, or whatever.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And like I remember a couple times where like they'd have Batman speak or something like that, and like you're watching the cartoon and then you see the commercial, like, that doesn't sound like Batman. That sounds like an actor. You know what I mean? Like even back then I was like, what the heck is this? Like,
yeah, I always found that to be really annoying.
Yeah. But the coolest one, and something I saw rather recently, was the Joker van from the Toy Biz days, and that was pretty interesting. I mean, it was basically just Batman planes and Batmobile, and then Joker cycle and Joker van, I think it was. So, again, it wasn't like... Maybe...
Oh, man, it got us.
I was saying, maybe it didn't have enough villains and stuff for the kids to play with Batman. Boom, done.
Yeah, so let's move on from the Dark Knight collection onto Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah, this was a huge toy line. So we're talking about how big Batman was. I mean, freaking Ninja Turtles could it have been the biggest toy line of all time?
I think it's very close, and to really think about it, probably Star Wars would be the only one to maybe kind of dwarf it, but that's, let's say, in terms of original crazy like stuff, that was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, some of the stuff that they actually got away with and released and everything else, you're just like, what is this toy line? It was completely different from Masters of the Universe. As crazy as Masters of the Universe was, like, Ninja Turtles were like on steroids compared to, from the sculpts and just the weird faces and like accessories and stuff like that. Man, Turtles was a wild action figure line.
It was, and it started pretty basic. All you needed was your Leonardo, your Raphael, Michelangelo, Donatello, and then they had like Rocksteady and Bebop, Shredder, Krang, Splinter, April O'Neil, and it started off very reasonably. You buy these figures, you get the turtle van, and
that's the best.
Yeah, you can have fun for hours on end. But after that's when it got like really crazy.
Yeah, it's almost as if they like, they had like a dartboard with like animals on there, and they're just like, all right, let's do Walkabout, the kangaroo mutant, and then let's do Bullseye, like the bull mutant. You know what I mean? It was just like they had something for everybody. Like Dalmatian, they had Hotspot, the Dalmatian mutant, and it's funny because I was reading I had the original Turtles comic, and then like kind of watching the cartoon, I didn't really like immediately gravitate towards it because I was like, okay, wait, this is black and white, and now there's like different turtles, and as a kid I was like struggling to understand, whereas now it's like, oh yeah, there's multiple versions of everything and anything, you just kind of pick and choose. But I was reading, my main Ninja Turtle comic was Archie Comics, and they had the Mutanimals and everything else in there, so they kind of sort of used some of the toys that you would see as characters, and like it kind of made it work. So I remember being like, okay, I got to get Leatherhead, and I got to get Ray Fillet and Wingnut and Screw Loose, and man, those were cool.
They were. So the Turtle Van I mentioned, that was such a great vehicle. I mean, the playability on that thing was fabulous. And did you have the Turtle Van?
I did, and like as you're saying, it's such a it's one of those iconic vehicles, and they've always at every Ninja Turtle iteration from them has kind of like incorporated that some way, but never to the effect of what they did. It's always it's never improved upon. Like that was like perfection. It was so basic. You could put all 4 turtles in there. You could put one in a little sidecar, the thing that flipped out, and the turtle blimp. That was another.
Yes, the turtle blimp.
Awesome
I had that.
Yeah.
I remember.
I popped.
That's funny because I remember like the balloon was like really hard to stay on or something.
You know what? I remember that. It was, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't seen or handled one of those things in years, but I think it was it was like 2 little slots, but as you moved it around, because you had the handle for like the jet part, and it would fly off. God, I haven't thought about that in a long time.
Yeah, that was a good one. And one thing I liked that they did, and they actually brought this back for one of the Nickelodeon lines a few years back, was when you could open the shells and store all your extra accessories in there.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
And
that made it easy to find those little tiny pieces. They used to come with throwing stars, and they were smaller than like a dime. They were ridiculous,
tiny. Yeah, I loved having that because I mean, you weren't going to lose any of those little stars if you had the shells. You could hide your accessories in there.
Exactly.
And I remember there were some also where you could press the heads down and they would go like into the torso and they'd pop back up.
Yeah, and those things hurt. Like if you kind of like put them up against somebody's like, knuckle or something like that, they would be like, dang. Like nowadays it'd be a big warning on the package, like don't hurt each other.
I know. And there were a couple of shredders, weren't there? Like I know that there was the one that like didn't have the shirt and he looked kind of weird, but
yes,
there was also.
Oh, sorry. No, I was saying NECA made the perfect shredder recently with their little Target exclusive old school cartoon turtles. Like they have put that thing in the ground, like the shirtless soft goods shredder that was pre-posed with his hand stretched out and he's all like, don't get me wrong, like it was like nostalgic perfection, but my god, that figure was awful.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. What's funny, I still haven't found, we're going off subject, I haven't found those NECA Toon Turtles anywhere.
Oh really? Dang it. I put a post up the other day. They had to put out a whole new thing. I'm sorry. I totally would have grabbed them for you.
Oh yeah, no worries. It's just, I don't know what it is. The Targets down here, the NECA sections are atrocious, and for whatever reason, they're just not getting the turtles.
Yeah, I have to agree. You and I, we don't live too far apart, but in the immediate area where I am, it's real hit and miss lately. I mean, I found the new Alien, stuff from NECA, but it goes either way, to be honest with you. Like they either stock it and it's gone in like 2 days and then doesn't come back for like, a good month or something like that. Yeah. And that's pretty much everywhere with people writing in constantly, and they're just like, what do we do? And I'm like, well, they're working on it. That's what I hear.
Yeah, so. That's what they say. And NECA posts a picture. Oh, the turtles have been restocked, and you're like, really?
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was another shredder too, right? There was one that had like a wind-up knob on the side, and it would do something else.
Yeah. Let's see. There was the original shredder. There was Super Shredder from Ninja Turtles, like Secret of the Ooze. There was like Feudal Shredder. was it Cyber Future Turtle Shredder? That guy was actually pretty cool. And I think you're right. I know if I'm remembering correctly, I had a Leonardo, or no, I had a Michelangelo, and you'd twist a little knob on his side and he would spin like a piece of pizza. I can't remember if there was a Shredder or not. I think you're spot on though. If I just can't picture it in my head.
Yeah, I can vaguely remember it. Like it had like a knob on it. I'm trying to do a quick like Google search, but I don't even see it. So it's like I don't know what it was.
Well, like you're saying, like they went through like every kind of iteration of turtles. They had like Star Trek turtles and movie turtles, Toon turtles.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Rockstar turtles, right? Like
yeah, troll turtles.
Oh gosh, yeah, it was crazy. There was all manner of turtles, and I really liked the real feel skin sort of ones that they had that were like from the movie, like this movie were they movie star turtles or something?
Yeah, I think so. And they were supposed to be like the movie, but they had those they look like sores all over them. But they were trying to make them look like. And I remember seeing those in the store, and I'm like, what the heck is that? Like even as a kid, I was like, no, I'm good. Like that doesn't look like the cartoon. I was one of those kids where if it didn't look like the cartoon, I was like really distraught about it. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't know what that is. I'm moving on. Like I need show accurate things, please.
Yeah. It there were like liver spots they had all over the bodies, and
yeah.
I found the Shredder. I'm sending you the picture right now.
Okay.
But yeah, and then Playmates, they brought these back for the 25th anniversary of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toy line, and they recarded all the old stuff on on reproductions of the vintage packaging, and it was really cool to have those in stores once again.
Yeah, that's like maybe a couple years before Toys R Us went out. That was cool to see. And I think Target got them too, didn't they? Or a few.
Yeah, they did for a little bit. Little bit.
No, I think that's always cool when they reissue like old stuff, as long for big collectors and stuff. Like make sure it's discernible between old and new, of course. But I love old school packaging. A lot of stuff today intrigues me. I think it's great, but there's something about like old fashioned illustration and putting that onto cards. I think that's why I'm actually really liking the Hasbro Power Ranger ones with the card art on that. The guy who illustrated it all, it has that real, just, I don't know, that niche where it's like, that's cool. That's something that maybe I'd even keep the box just because the card art is so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like colorful and it's detailed and it's pretty good size, and
yeah,
you can see all the toys on the back that you could add to your collection. And
I miss that. I'm missing like a big, just. I kind of like this stuff because you're forced to talk. Go, and now it's like we have to abide by the rules. You'll never know what I was gonna say. But I did get your picture of the Shredder. That's I do remember that guy.
Yeah, that's
big bright red.
It's like pink and blue.
I don't think the makers of the toys ever saw a picture of what the Shredder looked like from the cartoon. They were just winging it the whole time.
It almost seems that way. All right, so this next one is one that I don't really recall, but you mentioned it, and it's called. We'll give this one a 5-minute segment, but it's Biker Mice from Mars.
I'll just talk about it really fast. Like going off of like Ninja Turtles, they were like, you know what, like mutant turtles, that sells. What else can we turn into animal stuff for kids? And I guess they settled on Biker Mice from Mars, which much like Street Sharks and Battletoads, it was everything in the kitchen sink that they thought kids could gravitate towards. And it's basic. It's just Sons of Anarchy with mice, and they and they had motorcycles, and they fought like a fish man who was a businessman. It was a wackadoo cartoon, but the toys were actually pretty interesting, pretty cool, and it had that charm of everything fired missiles, and everyone was like roided out, steroids, and the vehicles were pretty cool. It was all motorcycles, and I have the 3 mice and the villain.
That's funny.
Yeah. It's one of those lines where, you see the packaging now, and you're like, oh yeah, that's probably why this like didn't do too well. You know what I mean? I think Galoob did them. That was like another, it wasn't Micro Machines. This was Biker Mice from Mars. So
how funny. And I don't think we have this on the list because I don't even know what it's called. But I kind of remember these little. There were like plastic like little plastic containers where you could put like a soft like unicorn or stuffed animal. You could like smush it in and then close it. Do you remember that?
Do you remember the name?
I don't. I only remember it from like memory, but I don't know what it was called.
Okay. Wish you could like type that into Google and that would just pull up like squishy unicorn inside barrel. I'm trying to think. Like it sounds familiar, but then I'm thinking like, is it something recent because of all the blind bag stuff that's tainted my my memories?
Yeah, it was like a plastic canister type thing, and you would just like smush in your little animal and take it on the go. But yeah, I did a quick search, and I don't see anything like that. So,
well, we leave it up to you. Oh, dang it. I was gonna say we have to leave it up to the listeners here to scour for that. Now it's gonna bug me now, though. Now I'm gonna have to find that and get back to you on that one.
I have no idea what it was. I just remember somebody had it and putting it in there. I thought it was the coolest thing, but it was probably a girl's toy, but I don't. And and before anybody like says anything, yes, there were Barbies and stuff laying around the house, but I just never found them as fun or as interesting as any of these other toys.
You know what? It's like even I say like nowadays, there's Barbies in the boys section and there's superheroes in the girls section. So it's just like it's a free for all now, and that's cool. You know what I mean? I don't see boys playing like with super dolls and things like that. But I think girls can play with superheroes, and if boys want to go with Toy Story, Barbie's one of the characters. Whatevs. Who cares?
Yeah, totally. I think it was a little bit different though when we were growing up, as far as like, I mean, even now sometimes people are like, why are you playing with that? But
yeah, well, I was at an Easter thing and this kid had a Captain Marvel doll, and my immediate thing was like, why does that boy have a Captain Marvel doll? And then I was like, oh wait, who cares? Because they're in the, you know what I mean? Like it's Captain Marvel, it's a superhero. But you said, like you said, we grew up in a time where it was like, pink is girls and blue is boys.
Exactly.
And if you step outside those barriers, you get a talking to. No.
Yeah. Basically, it's especially me coming from a small town in Texas. You can only imagine.
Oh yeah, jeez.
All right. So the next thing I have here, we'll give it 5 minutes, is Swamp Thing from Kenner.
Oh yeah.
So, you know what? It's funny because up until a couple of years ago, I didn't even know that there was a cartoon for Swamp Thing. I always assumed that the Swamp Thing figures were based off the live-action TV show that aired on USA.
Wasn't that TV show awesome? I remember watching that with my dad, and I remember him being like, what is this? And I was like, Dad, it's Swamp Thing. It's like, I didn't even really know what it was. I'm just watching it as like just a weird, creepy television show.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. The cartoon was not the greatest thing, but it was certainly short-lived. And I think, like they made toys back then on a lot of rated R, quote unquote, like type properties. They had RoboCop and they had Terminator. And I think they had all these good intentions where it'd be like, yeah, we can totally take Swamp Thing and do like 40 Swamp Things and then like have like 3 or 4 villains. But, not all the time that thinking, well, these might actually be like horrifying things to kids or, without some kind of cartoon to make it okay. Because just seeing some of the toys that they did, you're like, what is this? You know what I mean? If you were like 3 or 4, you'd be like, I'm confused.
Yeah. And kind of similar to like Batman, these Swamp Thing figures each had something different about them. You had like, there was quite a few. So that you had like a Swamp Thing that it was brown, and then it had like green on the top, but then you would dunk it in water, and then the whole thing would turn brown. Do you remember that? It was like camouflage Swamp Thing, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, it's funny you say that because like that was like a big thing back in the day of like instituting like water, or you know what I mean, like some kind of squeezy water or freezing them, or that was a good play feature.
For sure. And then there was like one that was like a darker like green color, and it came with like this it kind of looked like a trap, like a creature's head or something, where you would open it up and you could put like your villain figures in there and close it. Do you remember that?
Yes, that was. I think it was like a little green guy, right?
Yeah. Like it looked
Yeah,
like
that was
like twigs or something.
Yeah, that was the one that came with the. You could pull his arm out and you'd squeeze his legs to kind of re-ravel. Like it was like a string. His arm would be on a string, so it'd be like he's like doing kind of ropey vine, kind of grab the villain kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, at first I thought you were talking about like when I first got this figure, I thought that someone had tied the net like in a knot around. So I'm sitting there trying to like undo it, and it's part of the figure where it's like a net that you kind of move, like hold his arm up and he kind of throws it down like you're capturing a villain.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things where I swear to God, I thought it was like, I was like, oh, somebody just tied this on here. So I'm like sitting there for like 5 minutes, not realizing like, don't take this off. Gave up, thank God. And then, yeah, had I torn that off, I would have been like, yeah.
Yeah. And then there was like BioGlow Swamp Thing, which glowed in the dark. And, which was a huge staple, of course, of late 80s, early 90s glow in the dark.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was like Snap Up Swamp Thing, which had like a snare or like, it was like some sort of a bazooka looking thing that he came with.
Yeah. And I got to say, like, for, let's say, creativity wise, I mean, they all had really, like, this was like, if they made these things now, like, I would be like all over this. You know what I mean? Like this, the villains were cool. You'd put these like little rubbery, clear plastic things over them, made them even more terrifying.
Looked like spiders and stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And then you had like one human character,
Tomahawk.
There was it? Tomahawk, and then there's Bayou. I was thinking of Bayou Jack because he was like, I think they were both in the cartoon, and I think I'm trying to think which one like reused something. I forget, but the best thing was that they had the playset, the swamp playset.
Yeah,
and that was like unlike a lot of playsets. Like it had like flowery like stuff, and it looked like a swamp, and it was wild. And I have it; it's amazing.
I've been meaning to go back and get that because I bought most of these figures like a couple years ago, and I haven't opened them up yet or anything. But I've been meaning to get that playset because that's probably one of the best playsets that any toy company ever did, from what I've seen like through videos and stuff.
Yeah, when I got mine, like you were saying, like you kind of got them. So I had these Swamp Things growing up, but I didn't have the whole set. And I think it was a year or two ago. It's always when I'm talking. That's funny. No, I got them all, and I had to fix the swamp part of the playset, and it actually came out looking pretty good. I was pretty impressed with myself.
Yeah. I think did you do a video for that on YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I might have seen that. I know we're over time on this, but just real quick, I just wanted to throw in also that was a fabulous playset. And if you want Swamp Thing figures, they're generally speaking, they're not too expensive on eBay. So, I mean, you can go back. No,
not at all.
They're awesome too. And there was actually one variant of the camo Swamp Thing. I think early in the production run, they actually changed like it was the camouflage one, like how much green he had on his body, like his arms and stuff. For a while I had it in the box and everything, but eventually I was like, well, it's cool to have, but I don't really do carded usually, so I passed it on to another collector. But it's still probably one of the rarest figures that was ever done, I think.
That's pretty cool though, just to say you had it at one time. And it's always, if you're not doing anything with it, I always say like, give it to the person that has been clamoring for it, or you know what I mean, like it makes their day, and you can go off and buy something else.
Exactly. And when I bought it, the seller didn't even know that it was a variant, because I think that's how it's been with some of these auctions for that figures. People just don't know. So you can often grab them at a great price, and if people do happen to know like about the variant, then they'll price it like for $200 or whatever. But so Swamp Thing, love it. But now we got to move on.
Okay.
We are talking the Robin Hood toy line, also by Kenner.
This is one of those rare toy lines where I actually never collected it, but I know like too much about it. Like Like it's the toy line that just wouldn't leave toy shelves. That's what I think I remember Robin Hood was.
Oh wow. Yeah. I had a few of these figures. Like I don't know what happened to them over the years, but I did go back maybe like 5 or 6 years ago on eBay, and I did buy several of them again. And I never got around to opening them or anything, so I still have them boxed. But they were fun because Kenner back then they weren't doing 3 3/4 inch. They had it was like a 4.5 inch to 5 inch scale.
Yeah,
that they were doing, and that's what these figures were. They were like Jurassic Park scale, like 4.5 inches, and it was a pretty decent likeness to Kevin Costner, I think.
Yeah, I remember that. It wasn't too bad. They gave him his ponytail, right, and everything. Like it was.
He had like a mullet or something, I think.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
I'm trying to look up photos right now so I can.
Yeah, the best thing about this line, I think, was the weapons that these figures came with, particularly Robin Hood, because there were a couple of different ones. Like one had the bow and arrow, and you could actually shoot the arrows. And then the other one had like a crossbow, and you could launch arrows from that too. And I just thought, as a kid, I was like in love with that.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't it that was it Friar Tuck or something? It was like a reuse of the Gamorrean Guard.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, it was. And even the play set, there was a play set for this toy line, and it was a repurpose of the Ewok play set from the Return of the Jedi vintage line. That's right. Yeah. And then some of them used superhero like the DC superheroes that they had done for some of the. Yeah, this was like a cobbled together line. It totally was. And, when you think about it, they would never do a toy line for this kind of movie these days, Yeah. No, they certainly do it for that Russell Crowe one that came out not too long ago. For good reason. No, I'm just kidding. But there was like a cereal for this movie, and I remember buying it as a kid. I was like, oh yeah, Mom, I want that. Because on the commercial, no way, I didn't remember that. That's awesome. They did, and they would make it really appealing in the commercial. Because in this film, there's that really awesome shot of when he shoots the arrow, and the camera kind of follows the arrow. Yes, and they showed that in the commercial for the cereal, and then they would show the arrows falling into a cereal bowl. I'll have to look for it and send it to you, but yeah, it was pretty epic. That's awesome. Like kids just getting showered with arrows while they're eating cereal. Oh my god. It was the early 90s. Yeah. Safety isn't always first. No, it never was. We grew up you'd fall, you get back up real quick. Yeah, you'd play outside all day, and you'd come in dirty with scuffs on your knees and on your hands. Oh yeah. Your mom would wash all your toys in the sink. I remember my Ninja Turtle would come back just caked in mud. She's like, God, where is mud? It hasn't rained. I'm like, oh, don't worry, I found it. Yeah, I would do weird stuff like bury figures, and then dig them up later. And yeah, at my grandparents' house, they had a little pond, and I remember making a hole in the side of the pond and putting the figure in there. And I was like, okay, I'll look for it when I come back. Just weird stuff. Yeah, kids don't even know what outside is anymore. No. Such good times. Yeah. No, I remember I broke many a figure. I was toss them up in the air. And oh yeah, it'll land. Arm pops off. I'm like, oh, what have I done? Yeah. I've been doing the Star Wars retrospective for all the different Star Wars toy lines that they've done. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I was talking about was the time that I took a Prince Sheezer figure and strapped it to a rocket that was left over from New Year's and then sent it off into the sky. That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, well. It was a peg warmer. I was like, I hate you. You're not letting anything new come through. I was just going to say, you can definitely just find another one, no problem these days. Yeah, even now, right? Yeah, seriously. Except for that Clone Emperor. That's what everyone's thinking for the new Star Wars movie coming out. I posted a picture of that. That was funny. And I was like, get to eBay now or something like that. And so somebody was like, wait, is this for the new Rise of Skywalker? And I'm like, no. I'm like, my joke didn't land. That's I'll stop. Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, it's at this point, it's 20 years ago. So most people are probably like, what is that? What does it mean? Oh yeah. I mean, I'll admit, even as a kid, sometimes they had Power of the Force, but when Shadows of the Empire came out, it wasn't until later where I read the comic book. So I didn't really know what that toy line was. And, yeah. You're sorry. That's really funny. Yeah. All right. So our next line, aliens. What do you think? 5 minutes or 10 minutes?
Ooh, I could talk forever on aliens, so I'll let you set that one.
Okay, because I don't know too much about this line, so I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Aliens was like that classic where let's do a rated R property for a toy line. And I don't think anybody thought this through where, you have aliens because human beings have died. And I believe it was the fact of like, well, we can't, sell this to kids or have kids be thinking like, I have this toy because somebody died, basically. So they thought killing animals was better. So you had like the crab alien and the mantis alien and the rhino alien, and you had the Marines, and it was like the aliens had already, like, it had come out like a long time ago, and they used that as the basis for the cartoon. They had a promo, animated, and they had all these plans, and the cartoon completely fell through. They didn't do anything with it, but they had the toys made, and then they were just like, well, we got to release it. And they actually did fairly well. They kind of paired them up with Predator, and it's a very fun, cool, and interesting line. I mean, the toys were some of the best, like, most interesting looking toys that I can remember from the 90s, just in design and concept, and totally being wild, combining the xenomorph with all these different kinds of animals, like the gorilla alien, and they had a spider alien, they had this giant flying queen, and they really like went all out. It was, I love that. I love the creativity in that line more than anything.
Yeah, that I never really bought this line. Like, as a kid, I hadn't seen the Alien movies, and but I do vaguely remember like seeing them on the shelf. It just wasn't like the kind of thing I was really like into, or I didn't. Nobody bought me any of the toys, because otherwise, sometimes you would get introduced to movies through the toys. And you would see these. Oh, what's this? This is an awesome toy. And somebody goes, oh yeah, this is that new movie. Oh, I want to go see it. And then you'd start buying more of the toys.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, by the way, my dog's having a dream right now, so she's like making all kinds of weird noises. I don't know if the microphone's picking them up or not, but
no, you're good. Yeah, either way. No, the Alien line. It's funny because I think that they didn't really have anybody to gear it towards, because the movie was rated R. So you're not going to be bringing a lot of kids to it. The kids are only going to be able to see it on a VHS, most likely. You have to, buy a VHS, watch it, to really even know what Aliens was if you were that kid at that age buying toys. So it's a very interesting thing. Not surprising that they didn't do too well, and I think the majority of the last wave got exclusive to KB Toys and then overseas as well. A lot of the toys, some of the human characters, some of the aliens actually go pretty high up in price. And I highly recommend them. I think they're amazing, but it's like once you get a few of them, you're like, I got to see this through to the end. I mean, they even had the power loader, from Aliens, but they outfitted it with like projectiles and weapons, and they had a giant jet and a jeep, or like a tank and everything else. So,
wow.
And the best part though, I mean, there's not too many figures. There's just right around, I think, like maybe 25, like counting in my head, but 25 different characters maybe, and then 3 or 4 vehicles. So not too many, but there's some variants that they did where they took the gorilla alien, and then overseas they had silver and black, whereas here it was blue and black. So there are a couple variants, here and there, but same toy. Nice.
Yeah, they definitely look cool. I mean, when you go back and look at pictures of them, they're colorful, and I think I don't know which one it is, but isn't there like a translucent alien too?
There, a couple of them had like translucent parts, like the mantis alien, which had like a variant, like you get a dark green, or you could kind of get like a silvery translucent one. The flying queen had like translucent, like veiny wings to it, which was really cool. The gorilla alien, you could squeeze its head, it spray water. A lot of them had like grabbing features and missile features, and it's like not a lot of reuse. Like you wouldn't think you'd think like, oh, you make one alien and it's like the same one over and over again. But I think they only reused like one or two molds and got two different toys out of it. For the most part, they were all like original sculpts. And when you have them like all out and stuff, you're like, I want to see this movie. Like, I want this as like an alien, something. So
nice.
Yeah, I love those things.
I'm watching the timer. I think it's gonna go off any second now.
Okay, I'm gonna let you talk so it gets you this time.
Well, I don't have anything to say about that because I didn't really collect it, or I didn't collect it at all. So
yeah,
but yeah, that's a good summarization of it, I would say.
No, this is fun. I hope like everyone that's listening right now is just like, oh dang, I got some collecting to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you would do in the early 90s. I mean, like Saturday mornings, you'd wake up, have a bowl of cereal, you'd sit down and watch your cartoons, and then you'd go outside and play with the dog for a while. Then you come inside and you play with your Jurassic Park toys, and that was all before lunch.
Yeah, exactly. No, and those were like the good old days, and I feel like they're gone, but they're not really gone, and
nothing's ever really gone.
Man, that's the new slogan of the day, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, it's like back then, it's like the internet. What's the internet? It's like,
yeah.
I mean, how many people had computers in their homes? Not many.
No, I mean, we got ours late in the day, and I was telling people, I mean, I'm sure you did the same. The only reason you'd know about this stuff is if a friend got it or brought it to school, or you'd pick up Wizard or Toy Fair magazine. And that was even later down the road.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it was all about just going in the store and seeing what showed up.
Yeah, there was no like speculation, like what's the next one they're gonna make, or
Yeah.
I heard a rumor that no, you didn't. Like, you don't know what they're gonna do until they do it.
Oh yeah, you were just appreciative to get anything new back in the day. You're like, oh my god, like there's new, aliens, or there's new turtles or something like that, because you just they didn't tell you. There was like back then it wasn't like this massive industry where it's full knowledge and information swapping and everything else.
Yeah, crazy, very crazy. Okay, so the next line is the Hook line for the movie Hook. Was this the toy line that you collected?
I didn't collect him. I did have the Peter Pan, and I want to say I got him from like a garage sale. But I did collect the McDonald's Hook action figures, and I remember.
Oh, that's right.
I remember the Happy Meal box explained how Hook got the kids from the movie in the first place because he flew the Jolly Roger to the house with Tinkerbell's magic, and I was like, oh, that makes total sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even as a kid, I was like, I have no, like, how did this even happen? And I always thought that was cool. Like, a Happy Meal revealed, the deleted scene or something like that.
That's funny. Yeah, so there's in this toy line, it was actually made by Mattel. So they made a Robin Hood figure, and he had like this pack on his back. They had like a zip line or something. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the figure, it's the worst likeness you will ever see. It looks nothing like Robin Williams. Like,
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, that's the one I had. This the green one with the sword, right?
Yeah, I had this one too. And yeah, he looks terrible. He doesn't even look human.
Yeah,
he looks and yeah, it's like some sort of a he's got a sword, yeah, but he also has like a zip line pack. And I kind of remember like you would like tie it between like a couple of chairs or something. You just make him like fly, I guess.
Like a zip line. Yeah. Okay, I'm looking. Oh, okay. Yes, they reused that I think a couple times for different figures, if I'm not mistaken.
I wouldn't be surprised. And then what's really a great figure from this line, and it's kind of funny because if you look at the figures in this line, they're not very proportionate. They look kind of wacky. Like I mentioned, Robin Hood. Robin Hood. Peter Pan. He's all beefed up.
Yeah.
Robin Williams wasn't like that in the film, obviously.
No.
But other figures in this line also look like that, except they did 2 Hook figures of Captain Hook, and one of them has like one of the most beautiful like sculpts like of any figure around that time. Like just the costume, there's like gold metallic paint on his body. He's got a hat. It's just, do you see that one? It looks freaking awesome.
Yes, and he like it's like the red, like how he basically looked in the movie.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I remember I had this one too, and it was, for all intents and purposes, it was kind of a statue. I mean, you can move his arms and maybe his legs, but And then if you look at the accessories there, he had kind of like what the Ninja Turtles used to come with, where they'd have the parts tree and you have to pull off the little weapons and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah, I'd like to grab a couple of these again because I mean they were fun, and like I said, this Captain Hook in particular was just a really nice sculpt.
It's funny looking at them now, and I mean, like, I knew they existed. I never collected them. I never got into them, but I didn't know they had the alligator or the crocodile. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it is. I didn't know about that either until a few years back when I was like looking at them on eBay. But yeah, that's really cool. I'd like to go back and grab several of these because they're just they're fun.
Yeah.
Even though they look, most of them don't look very good, they're still fun as, toys. And I think back then that's the main thing the companies were going after was, playability and making sure that, you had plenty of accessories in there to have a good time with your figure. And I think they pretty much succeeded on that front.
Yeah, I think so. I totally agree with that because while, like you're saying, it didn't look anything like Robin Williams, I guess you didn't need that as a kid. You know what I mean? Like, you were just like, oh, I love the movie Hook. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't know why I didn't collect the figures. Probably because I was collecting something else or,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, but, no, that was a great movie. And, it was all about using your imagination and having these wild play features for the toys that you could do stuff with. And, part of me said, like, a lot of times nowadays with stuff that comes out for movies, it's very much just like, here's the figure and here's something that snaps onto their wrist. But then they don't really make like the heroes and the villains. It's like the new Spider-Man Far From Home. It's like all Spider-Man. And then I think you have Mysterio and Molten Man. And I'm like, well, what are kids supposed to, do with, like, how do you have 5 Spider-Man and then, 2 villains or, you know what I mean? Like it's not there to get that interest or that imagination going. So.
Exactly, and it's fine if they want to have like multiple Spider-Mans or multiple whatever, but if they're not also balancing that out by producing like the villains or some of the other characters, it's like you really can't like recreate much from the film if you're just focusing on Spider-Man figures. Yeah,
and people like to talk about it's a basic figure, doesn't have that the best articulation. I'm like, I grew up in the '90s. Like, there was no articulation on things. So, like, when things are articulated these days, I'm just like, thank you. Like, but I'm happy either way. You can go either way most of the time.
And it's funny. It didn't really even cross our mind. It was just like, we just accepted that that's how the figures were. We didn't even think, they could have made, jointed elbows. Like, that wasn't even a consideration.
No, you were just happy to like get stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I really like that movie. Oh my God, they have like merchandise for that movie. Nowadays, it's be like, where's the merchandise for the movie?
Exactly.
What aisle is it on?
Exactly. So, throughout the 1989 into the 90s, each of the Batman films and the animated series each had their own toy lines. So let's take 5 minutes for Batman Returns. I think we might have skipped over that one.
Yeah.
So Batman Returns was very similar to what they did with the Dark Knight collection under Kenner. In fact, I think they repurposed most of the Batman costumes, most of the figures into the new Batman Returns line. There was even figures like Bruce Wayne where he had like the armor you could put on his body. And
that was the best. That was my favorite.
Yeah, and that was repurposed from 1989. And I think most of these figures weren't. But, of course, you had things like Catwoman, which I think at the time was a really nice figure. I remember getting her on Christmas morning. And the Penguin looked nothing like the Penguin from the movie.
No.
Was he repurposed from maybe the Super Friends line or something?
He was superpowers, yeah, because he used to have blue. He had a blue hat, trench or coat, and pants, and they had white spats, and then the white shirt with a multicolored umbrella. And I think they do red,
and
black and white, yeah. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think they had the designs for what the Penguin was going to look like, and I think it was a decision to be we can't sell, this is horrifying, you know what I mean, we can't make the figure look like this. So I think that's why they chose to go that route. And do you know about the Robin figure? Because I just recently found this out.
Yeah. So so they did make a Robin figure. He's got a flat top on him. So I think the rumor was who was the actor that they said was supposed to play him?
Marlon Wayans. No, yeah, Marlon Wayans or Damon? No, it was Marlon Wayans, the younger one at the time.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So if you look at the figure, it does resemble him.
Yeah,
I think the story was that he was supposed to be in Batman Returns, but then ultimately they didn't bring him into the film or something.
yeah. He got paid like for doing nothing, I hear, and I was like, that's the sweetest. That's a pretty good job. But I always wondered why Robin had that flat top. As I had the figure as a kid, I didn't understand it. I was like, that's really bizarre. And then like years later, and then finding out, I'm like, oh my god, that makes total like hilarious sense. Like that they did that. But then I kind of feel like I remember the comics around that time had Robin, and he almost looked like that too. And I was like, are they trying to like cover it up? You know what I mean? Like, did they go all out with this? So
Yeah, some of the vehicles too were repurposed from the Dark Knight collection. Like I mentioned earlier, for 1989, you had things like the Batcopter and like motorcycles and just random stuff, and they brought all that back. They even had role play. There was like the Batman armor set, which came with like his chest armor and like a mask, and I think he had a cape and maybe like some handcuffs or something.
yeah, I think you're right.
And there were two Batmobiles in this toy line. So the first one was a reissue of the Batmobile. Actually, there were three. This one was a reissue of the 1989 Dark Knight Collection version, which very nice Batmobile. It's still a very sought after toy. And I actually added this one in my collection like 2 years ago.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I grabbed one brand new in the box. Got a really good deal on it. And they also offered a camo, like a camouflage version of it. It was the same one repainted. Yeah, it was like kind of like a yellowish white color with black, and
it was ugly.
It was ugly. It wasn't.
It
but
came
people,
with a Batman figure too, right, or something like that.
It did, and people will still pay good money for that because it's still based off that awesome car.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the Bat Missile, which was, if you remember Batman Returns, Batman's in a sticky situation. He can't fit the Batmobile through a wall. So there's like a really narrow alley or something. I don't know why it's so narrow, but
it's because of plot. No.
Exactly.
they're like, let's make it weird. No, yeah, I totally know. Yeah.
It splits apart, and then, so basically they did this with the toy. They recreated that scene, and this one also goes for a heavy sum on the secondary market these days. There was also the Penguin umbrella jet. Do you recall that one?
I remember that. I didn't have that. The only one I had was the Bat Missile, and I remember like the Bat Missiles would flip up from the side, or the actual shooter missiles would flip up from the side, but you'd push the button in the very middle of the Batmobile, and the two sides would split off. That was, oh man, I remember doing that over and over again. But the Penguin jet, I remember what it looks like. It had like umbrellas that would like you drop out or shoot out or something like that. Like, and it was an open canopy.
Yeah. It's one of the wackiest like vehicles you'll ever see. I mean, because the vehicle itself, like the design of it is a freaking umbrella, and underneath the wings it has umbrellas that I guess spin as he's flying around. It's just ridiculous, but nonetheless, it's one that I've been meaning to go back and pick up because it just looks freaking fun. And that Penguin figure, I know we said he doesn't look anything like the movie Penguin. It was still a great figure. I think even to this day I still enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah. That was the thing. It was just, I mean, they had so many different Batmans for this line, but they had the villains, they had they had playsets, and they had vehicles, they had stuff that you could actually play with and shoot missiles. That's one of my favorite things is when they have like the spring-loaded stuff. That was always so much fun, or just something interesting to actually play with. And I just remember Batman Returns having. I mean, they even had the Batman where you push the thing on his back and he'd do the arms up and his cape would pop up, and it was, They did, and they had like deluxe ones too that, like, I remember there's one Batman figure, I know we're going over our time, but we got to talk about how great these are. It was like you would press, it was like Sonic Batman or something, and he had like a gray suit, and you'd press a button and his arms would just pop out and he'd hold his cape out, and he had like a rocket you would put across his back, and then you could make him like go around making like these high-pitched sonic noises. I think I remember that in the commercial. I think that if I'm not, I don't know. I got to look at it now, but
it was in a commercial. Yeah.
Oh, it was? Okay. Yeah. And then they had the 2-pack of the penguins.
Yes.
I remember that.
So
that was just the fact that you're buying a pack of penguins.
Those are the army builders of this toy line.
Right? Yeah. And they had little headsets and the like backpacks, and that's what they should have done with Porgs, with Star Wars. Like, I don't know. After seeing the movie, I don't know how many people wanted to buy that, but that's what they should have done. They did actually. Never mind. They had the 2-pack of Porgs.
Yeah, that's true. And there was also the Bat Ski Boat, which is something that was in the film, and we see that towards the end where he's kind of going around in the sewer, which is kind of a random thing because it's like Bat Ski Boat. That's not really the first thing you would think of when you think of what's the next Batman vehicle we can make,
right? Yeah.
But okay, we'll take it.
And then they had the coupe, right, or the car,
the Bruce Wayne coupe, yeah.
Yeah, and it would. What did it flip him from Batman to Bruce Wayne? I guess it's
Yes.
driving or something like that. Like the old Beetlejuice playset.
Oh yeah, and of course McDonald's had a whole tie-in for Batman Returns. It was huge.
Oh my god, yeah. I was almost just gonna say I remember the glasses, but that was Batman Forever. Remember they had the Riddler, Two-Face. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those were the mugs. I mean,
yeah. For Batman Returns at McDonald's, they had like these like discs on top, for the lids, and they were like plastic, so you could reuse them and you could use them as like frisbees and just toss it around.
Oh, that's all. I think I remember that. I have to look that up. It sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Though they had like so much like interactive, like stuff that.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's why we remember it so well, because of just implementing it.
Yeah. There's also like I think it was called like the Laser Blade vehicle, which I actually did a video for this one like maybe a year or two ago. And you had to get like the matching figure, which was sold separately. It was like Laser Blade Batman or something. And
I remember your thing on this, your post on this. Because the artwork was Bizarro on the front of it, right? Or did you mention that? Or it looks like his legs disappear into the art. Is that the box of it? Maybe it's not the one I'm thinking of.
It might be. Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah, I think overall though I preferred the Batman Returns line over the Dark Knight collection. I don't know why. Just like I guess it just feels like it was a little more well rounded in terms of they reproduced multiple Batmobiles. You still had the Wayne Manor. You still had all of your Batman figures, but you also had like Catwoman and Penguin.
Yeah,
and all those other vehicles that you could use for them. So. Yeah, I have this is like one of my favorite like toy lines of all time, Batman Returns by far.
Oh, awesome. Oh, well, I'll keep an eye out for Batman Returns stuff now for you.
Thanks.
Every once in a while I'll come across like, something weird, so I'll let you know. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like it was a total crazy like throw up of just like, here's all this wild Batman stuff. And I remember this stuff just flying off shelves.
Oh, yeah.
Like it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun, and even the card backs and just really nice artwork, and it has a lot of nostalgia right there. And in my opinion, the best Batsuit was the Batman Returns Batsuit. I'm
gonna have to agree with you on that one. That was I'm trying to think like because the Forever one had nipples.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It was definitely all about Batman Returns.
Absolutely. So, okay. I know we went way over our time on that one, but
no, it's what people are probably like, good. I'm glad you went over on anyone you had to go off.
Yeah, I should have given that one 10 minutes. It could have been 10 minutes, but in any case, let's move right along. Okay. Mighty Max and Polly Pocket.
Oh man. All right. Dang. I haven't thought about, like when we were talking the other day, I was like, oh yeah, like we could talk about Mighty Max, and Mighty Max was interesting. Like, I think Polly Pocket came first though, didn't it?
Yes, I believe so. I believe so.
And then kids, boys were probably like, oh man, like I wish there was like skulls and alien faces and things that I could play with.
They were like, hold my chocolate milk, boys. And then they whipped up Mighty Max.
Yeah. I remember the cartoon. Like I used to watch the heck out of the cartoon. I thought that was awesome. I thought the animation on that was pretty fun. I don't think it lasted very long, if I'm not mistaken, but I want to say that Mighty Max was bigger in Europe, if I'm not mistaken. Because it I don't know, it was here, and I had a few of the sets. I even had that giant purple castle.
Oh wow.
I think it was purple, the thing, but it wasn't as something that I was so into collecting. It was more like you're saying, a gift. People would get them every once in a while because they were, I think, fairly inexpensive, right?
Yeah.
But they were interesting. They were very cool to design wise and everything else.
Yeah. They're not very inexpensive now, but
not anymore. No,
it's crazy actually, because they're tiny. The little play sets can fit in the palm of your hand, and the figurines are probably half an inch tall.
Yeah. No, and those are tiny pieces that once they're gone, they're gone.
I think the first one I had two of these for Mighty Max. The first one was called, I think it was Wolf Starship, and it was kind of like a flying, an alien spaceship, and it had a couple alien figurines. It had Mighty Max, of course, and there's different levels. You flip these open, and there's different levels in there where you can do different things with your toys. I think there was even a miniature ship in there that you could pull out and play with. I'm looking at the photo right now. Yes, I had that one. I know exactly what you're talking about. The eyes were the two little globes or something within it. It fit together so cool. Yeah, is that what it was called? Was it Wolf Starship or something?
Yeah, no, you're spot on.
Okay. And yeah, I remember getting that one at Service Merchandise. Remember those?
Service Merchandise. Oh,
I don't know if they had them out here.
Not that I remember.
Yeah, so Service Merchandise was kind of it was kind of like JCPenney in the sense that, they had a huge catalog that you could order from.
Okay.
It was a big department store, and, they had, all this stuff where you would go into the store and you would select what you wanted, but you wouldn't pick it up off the shelf and then go check out. You would actually take a flyer, and then you would go to checkout, and then they would bring it out on a conveyor belt.
Oh, that's rad.
Yeah. And
no, we definitely didn't have that around here. That would have been awesome.
Yeah. Except for toys. Toys were Walmart or Target, they had full out, toy sections where you would just go grab whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
And this was this was a really long time ago now, but they went out of business, I think, in the late 90s. Or early 2000s. Okay. But yeah, it was a great place to get toys because, it was just another option. They had just as big a toy section as Walmart. I mean, it was a really, good for going and finding stuff, and prices were comparable as well. But before I ran out of time on Mighty Max, I think the only other one I had was Skull Dungeon.
I think I remember that one too. I had one that was in the shape of an alien. And I remember it looked like the little piece made it look like it was sticking its tongue out. Hold on, I got the thing up right now. And you said the skull one, right?
Skull Dungeon, yeah. It's basically a mad scientist's laboratory, in a castle or something.
Oh, and, okay, I see it right here. Yeah.
It was awesome because they had a little slab where you could put the Frankenstein's monster-looking guy and then lift him up. And then,
yes. Yeah, I remember that.
It has the mad scientist. It's got Max, and it's got an office at the top, and then a dungeon with a skeleton that's just hanging on the side. And
talking about artwork and stuff, man, the packaging is bringing me back. The really standout packaging on this stuff was incredible. It's comic book almost, but
yeah.
I mean, it told a story about what you were about to play with.
It did, and I mean, these were $5. They were on Christmas. They were stocking stuffers and just little things that you could, you wouldn't really have to save up for them because they were inexpensive and they were. Oh gosh!
Finally, now you know how it feels. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what it feels like. Yeah, these are great. I really wish that they would bring these back. I doubt they would be the same anymore, but
yeah. No, you could definitely the creativity in this is insane, and I feel toys nowadays nobody would have. Not saying nobody would appreciate it, but I'm saying the interest wouldn't be there, or it'd be a 5-second thing. Whereas I'd be oh my god, let's get these. But they would. I don't know if they would carry the same amount of the detail and pieces for the price.
Yeah.
This would be like what, $20 at least nowadays.
Probably.
So,
Gosh, these are fantastic though.
Yeah, now you're making me want to go back and collect these things. God dang.
I know. I'd love to own them again. I don't know what happened to the ones I used to have, but
I know I still have the castle somewhere, and that was like a huge like version of these things, like not like gigantic, but what was that, like Mighty Max, like Magma Mountain or something like that. It was giant.
Yeah, there were a couple of bigger ones that they also had where they weren't like the small places. They're a little bit bigger.
Yeah, you could do, like, I remember that thing came with like 1 million pieces, and yeah, it was enormous for being like a miniature sort of thing. So,
but yeah, these, if anyone listening hasn't heard of Mighty Max, I mean, go online and check these out, because there's so much like fun and like playability packed into these itty bitty things, and you could have like lots of fun, just like hours on end, just playing with them as a little kid.
And watch the cartoon too; it's pretty cool.
All right, so for this next one, I'll let you take the lead on this one because I don't know a whole lot about it. But you mentioned like Marvel Power Hour.
Yeah, so like we had X-Men the animated series on Fox Kids, and that led into Spider-Man the animated series. But around that same time when they were doing all that kind of stuff, I want to say like by us, or at least by me here, I think it was on the USA Network, or on it was either USA or Channel 13, one of those two. But they had the Marvel Power Hour, and it was Fantastic Four and Iron Man, and sometimes like the characters would kind of cross over, like the X-Men and all those were all in the same universe. Like it was like the MCU for like animated continuity back in the day. And I remember that for one of the Fantastic Four episodes, like they couldn't, and I didn't know this at the time, but they had they're going to use the Sandman, and they couldn't use the Sandman because they were trying to do a Spider-Man movie at that time. This was way before like the actual Spider-Man 3, and they had to use Hydro Man, and the Hydro Man appeared in Spider-Man the animated series. And then when I heard about that, I was like, oh my god, I haven't watched any of those. I've only seen Spider-Man and X-Men, so I had to catch up. I remember doing this as a kid, and then I went out to Toys R Us, and I was like, I gotta get Fantastic Four, I gotta get the Iron Man toys. And yeah, they got me with all that stuff. But there was so, and from reading comics and then seeing the animated series, a lot of times the animated series set the boundaries, and what I know or what I think about still to this day is what I think of Marvel. And just in having all those old Toy Biz toys. I mean, they're people say nowadays, like, I can't believe they won't make this figure, they won't make this character. And I'm like, they made the heck out of that figure. Like the most obscure villains and heroes and anything else that most people today would be like, who is that? I'm like, oh, let me tell you. Like, especially with like Marvel Legends, when they're like, oh man, I can't believe they're making a, like one of the Reavers or something like that. I'm like, they made like everybody back in the day.
How funny. Yeah, I'm looking up these guys online, and that's pretty well-rounded line, it looks like.
Yeah, they had, for the Fantastic Four and Iron Man were like two of those lines though where X-Men and Spider-Man really took off, and those lines kind of had maybe one or two waves, and then they kind of just fell into like the Marvel Universe, like subline that they did. So they'd still kind of release like an Iron Man character or a Fantastic Four, but Toy Biz did a lot of reuse back in the day. So a lot of Iron Man stuff, they'd, turn it into like a villain or something like that. So it was just, in one way, shape, or form, they would continue those figures, but just not under the banner of their property.
Right on. Yeah, these do look really interesting. Like, I mean, there's like Iron Man with space armor. Yeah. And who's this other guy? Dread Knight?
Yeah, Dread Knight. And they really did make like all the villains from the cartoon. They had the Mandarin, MODOK, and like you said, Dread Knight. They had Spider-Woman. They're even doing, they had a Marvel Legends, but they're doing another Marvel Legends coming up of that exact Spider-Woman. So it's kind of like a reinvigoration of the old animated stuff, coming back now. Everything's coming back.
Yeah. Which
But
I don't
yeah.
mind that too much, actually.
No, I don't at all. I mean, I'm excited they got the X-Men property. They're doing the X-Men classics that are coming back, so it's kind of like on the old Toy Biz card art, and I'm really hoping that they're going to do a Spider-Man, because the 25th anniversary of the animated series is like this year into next year, and I think there's a lot of cool stuff that they can do. So
Yeah, that would be pretty neat. So we haven't exceeded our time on this one, so that's a positive.
Yeah, I know, right?
But
I was the big. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go for it.
One of the big pluses for like everything that Toy Biz did though was they had the 5-inch figures, and they had play sets and vehicles and deluxe figures and 12-inch figures, and sometimes in some cases they had dolls, and this was all before they ever even touched Marvel Legends. You know what I mean? Like when they first got into that, and just the extensiveness of what they put out was amazing. The exclusives, like things that I'm still finding out to this day. I'm like, I never even heard of that store. Like, what? How would you know this? And they had the best part was on the back. They had just the amount of characters that they would show off on the back of the card art. Yeah, it was a blast. And they had a Toy Biz hotline number, which you could find out products.
Nice. All right, so let's move on to Creepy Crawler / Dr. Dreadful. So these were on TV like a lot. Like I remember, I think you mentioned the jingle earlier. It was like Creepy Crawlers.
Yeah.
And
those commercials were everywhere.
They were, and everything had a jingle too. Like, I mean, I could even Polly Pocket. It was like Polly Pocket's a small, you can take her anywhere. But yeah, like Creepy Crawlers was something they originally had done like in the 60s or 70s, wasn't it? And they were bringing it back.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, and I mean, even to this day, they've brought it back again. There's always like a different iteration of it, but is an interesting thing. You basically make your own little, bake your own little jelly things that you dump out in those little syrup bottles, and you peel them out of the molds.
It sounds so hilarious, like talking about it.
I'm thinking like Easy Bake. In my head, I'm like, is it like it's like Easy Bake Oven, but like, you know what I mean? Like you're cooking plastic.
Yeah. Like I think there was an article or something I had read recently where it said like the original Creepy Crawlers was like probably one of the most toxic like toys ever made, because kids were like cooking these like gummy sorts of things in like these plastic like ovens, and they're probably like generating lots of toxins and stuff.
Yeah.
It's crazy. The one that I didn't have Creepy Crawlers, but I did have Dr. Dreadful. And it was kind of like a spin-off of Creepy Crawlers, I guess, or like, like a knockoff of it maybe. Mm-hmm. But it was still pretty popular at the time. It had its own commercial, and there was like a mad scientist that would come on and say, oh, I'm making all these different things. And obviously as a kid, I was like, I gotta have this. So I know that with Dr. Dreadful, you could make like monster skin. And it's weird because to this day I can still taste it. Like it tasted kind of like, yeah, it tasted like Monster energy drinks, which is weird because, Monster, right? But
yeah.
And then you could make like brains. Like it was like kind of like a gelatin or something.
Yes, and I remember that aspect of the commercial where it like I think the kid like handed his friends like brain. He's like, look, I made you brains, and the kid like puts a spoon in. And I was like, what are these kids doing? Like it was like, but that was like part of the fun. Back in the day, and oh man.
Yeah, and they would I think that you could also make like gummy bugs or something, but they would give you like all the ingredients, but like once you used them all, it was like, I don't know if they sold like refill kits or how they would do that.
Actually, you know what I'm looking at right now? It says Food Lab refills. So they did. I don't remember seeing these at all. But it looks like they actually did.
Yeah, I remember like maybe using it like twice, and then after that I was like, okay, it's a lot of work to make all these, this food, and I don't really like the way it tastes anyway.
Yeah.
So, but they're cool display pieces, because if you look at like the little skull that would hold the brains in it, I mean, they look fun. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's just one of those things like, it's fun for a little bit, but how often can you eat brains?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think like even now they brought it back because I saw it in the store not too long ago, and I think they went full zombie with it or something like that. It looked, it wasn't just like I'm a mad scientist. It's like, oh, I'm making like dead people at this point, and you're just like, oh, okay, you're playing off the whole zombie craze. So every iteration of Dr. Dreadful will be, whatever's popular at the time.
Yeah, I wonder if you got a hold of one of these, if you could still like, because I think the ingredients were mostly like powders, like gelatin. I wonder if you could still use them.
That'd be interesting. I think, what did I say? Oh, not too long ago, somebody got a can of the old Ninja Turtle pasta and like opened it up, and it was just like black sludge, and I was like, oh my god.
That's funny.
Chef Boyardee.
Because I'm thinking of like when you have like, like Jell-O in the cupboard, like that stuff lasts forever, just powder.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't
challenge.
This?
We gotta, I guess one of us has to try this at this point.
Yeah, I don't think I want to die from be killed by Dr. Dreadful, so.
Yeah, that's not the way to go. You want to go out. How'd you die? Oh, Dr. Dreadful. It was a powdered gelatin accident.
Oh gosh, yeah. Just looking at the box, these were actually produced by Tyco, was the company that did Dr. Dreadful, and just looking at the box, like that mad scientist, doesn't he look like Doc Emmett Brown?
Yeah, I was gonna say that, and kind of. I want to say, like, I was gonna say Beekman. Remember Beekman's World, but not really.
Yeah.
No, but definitely more Doc Brown than anything.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. They're going off of whatever's popular at the back of the day.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, gosh. I mean, I almost feel like buying one of these just to have it,
Yeah.
Never using it, but just to have it.
I wonder if I mean, I haven't seen one in a very long time, but I wonder how much the old ones go for. That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. Okay, so there's several ways that they did Batman. So we talked about 1989. We talked about Batman Returns. So there was also the animated series, which was a huge toy line.
Yeah.
Back then. So let's take a few minutes and talk about Batman the Animated Series. So what do you remember about this toy line?
So I remember, like, I was so intrigued by watching Fox Kids, and they're like, oh, we're doing Batman, and they actually promoted that pretty well. I remember it was in comic books, and I read the comic book that was a tie-in, was Batman Adventures, and the first Batman figure I got from this line was actually Robin, because he had that yellow like hang glider kind of thing with the missiles would drop out, and man, I don't know why. I remember I was telling my dad, I was like, he's like, which one do you want? I was like, I want Robin. I don't know why I wanted Robin, but I think that was just like a fun one to get. And maybe also because when the first wave had two different Batmans, one was like normal looking Batman, and he had like an accessory, and the other one had like a jump parachute kind of thing going on. Uh-huh. And and as a kid, I was like, I don't want the weird looking one. I'm like, I want standard Batman. So that's probably why I went with Robin, but Two-Face and Joker was in it, and that was a great first wave of figures.
Yeah, it was, and I had this Robin also, and aside from the fact that he does have this really cool glider, he also has a really cool costume, I think, in this cartoon.
Yeah, it was. I remember his face sculpt was like very bland. If you remember, like he just had a smile and he had the black mask and the hair. But yeah, it was the costume with the cloth good cape that kind of hooked around his neck, and that was cool. Was it a almost reuse of the Return? No, it was. That's right. It looked kind of like Batman Returns is kind of Robin, but it was a different mold. But it kind of had that weird belt that didn't quite match up with the actual cartoon until later. So.
Yeah, no, it's a really cool figure. I actually didn't have too much from this toy line. I know I had Robin. I think I had a Batman, but I don't remember. I don't think it was like regular Batman. It was probably like a different costume or something. Yeah. But I did have the Batmobile, like the animated series, because I remember my grandmother got me that for Christmas. And that's one of the best Batmobile toys. I mean, it's...
Yeah.
It just stylistically, I mean, the design is awesome, but like as a toy, they really knocked it out of the park, like, recreating the aesthetic from the show. And absolutely loved how it had like the little glider in the inside where you could pull that out and then Batman could escape in this glider, and that was cool.
Yeah, they really, I think they nailed it in terms of like what the characters look like. Like I remember the Joker was pretty much spot on. Two-Face had like this weird like gold chain for whatever reason. I remember that, and he had like a really weird accessory where you turn the dial and it wouldn't fire if it was on good, and if you turned it to bad, it would let it fire or something like that. So that was cool.
Yeah.
Catwoman, Mr. Freeze, he had like the water squirting thing.
Yeah.
Clayface was great.
Yeah,
Poison Ivy. Man-Bat was cool. He had the big flapping wings with like a tow cable. You could like strap Batman to his leg like on leather wings. And man, it is funny because I went from Batman the Animated Series to Superman the Animated Series, and then Batman Beyond, Justice League Unlimited. So I have like that entire like DC animated universe like set of toys. And I look at it, every once in a while, and I'm like, that's a lot of characters. Dang.
It is. Yeah, it was a really huge toy line, and I know that this toy line hung around for a really long time, and I really don't know why I didn't really get all that into it. I assume because around the same time, you had like Jurassic Park line, and you had like, some of the other lines that were going on at the time. Star Wars, I think, in '95 came back. So there was just a lot to collect, and even as a kid, if you're getting toys, you're interested in like really invested in one toy line and actively collecting that, and you kind of move around to different things. You're not usually collecting like a bunch of toy lines at once.
Yeah, no, it's not like today where I'm like, I go in and I'm like, I hope I don't find anything. Like, I'm like, oh man, like you're walking down the aisles. I'm like, I collect that. Is there something new? God, there is. God.
Yeah. It's kind of like I mentioned earlier about the NECA turtles, like, that I haven't found them. Part of me, I need to get them at some point, like somehow. But part of me is like, every time I go to Target, I'm kind of hoping like, don't have them.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I mean, they're expensive. And then, to get all the sets, it's like, it's going to set you back a couple $100 or something, right?
Yeah. They're 53 a piece, and then by the time you get all four, that's over $200
plus tax.
I will tell you, and not to like rub it in, they're amazing. It's like everything you wanted as a kid, with turtles, especially the Shredder and the Foot Clan. But in talking about how, like you were saying, like there's so many different lines at once, like you had Batman Returns, and then Batman the Animated Series came after, and then you kind of had Legends of Batman, Legends of the Dark Knight, and then Total Chaos, or Total Justice. Total Chaos was the McFarlane one, but it was all like these different. Like DC was just as prevalent as like the Marvel stuff, I felt like, but they all had different sublines, and it was so interesting because you could find a Batman for whatever kind of taste I guess you were feeling. Like, do I want like a roided out Legends of Batman figure, or do I want the animated Batman figure, or the Total Justice comic book type Batman? So
yeah, and I guess let's just throw them in here while we're on the subject of Batman. But there were also toy lines, and I'm not going to put the timer back on because we're kind of like screw you timer at this point. But there was Batman Forever, and then Batman and Robin, which each had their own toy lines, both still by Kenner. Yeah. I never really got into either of these. I don't know about you, but I think for Batman Forever, it was just kind of like I was at the point where I was focusing more like on other things, and I just really didn't. I know I had one of the Batmobiles, but it wasn't like the one from the main line. It was like an RC Batmobile.
Okay.
And it was connected by like a wire. I don't know if you remember that. It was like
I'd have to probably see it. It sounds familiar though.
Yeah, like.
It's funny in talking about Batman Forever and then Batman and Robin, like the things I remember most is like the McDonald's commercial for like the superhero sandwich, and then like I said, those glasses that came out like for Batman and Batman Returns. Yeah. But I don't. Yeah, I know I probably had like one or two of the figures, but I think I had moved past like collecting Batman at that point because the movies just didn't interest me, I guess, as a kid. I was like, like it's. I'm in the animated series, so I stuck with that. Like I never collected the movie stuff.
Yeah, and I think something about the characters too from the films just didn't make the toys just weren't as appealing because of the characters to me.
Yeah, exactly. They try making something interesting out of those. Actually, I did like Batman Forever. Like, don't get me wrong, but Batman and Robin is just like, no.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it at the time, but I look at it now and I'm like, oh, this is awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, Batman Forever, that's the one like Batman film I didn't get to see in the theater, because I remember like at that point I was a kid, right? But I started taking like a part-time like job, like working at my grandpa. He had a used car dealership.
Oh, cool.
And I started like working with him, like washing cars, and I was like 10 or 11 like 10. But I remember like when I was working, my brother and my sister went to see it with like my cousins, and then I got home and I'm like, screw you guys, you didn't wait for me. So it just turned out I never got around to seeing it in the theater. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but like for the next couple of weeks, they're actually running the original 4 films like in theaters again.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So there's not very many theaters playing them. Like the AMC in Mission Valley is playing them. So I think I might finally remedy this and see Batman Forever in the theater.
Then you could finally say like, it took me almost 25 years, but it happened. It worked.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. No, actually, I didn't know about that. They put Batman Mask of the Phantasm back in theaters for like 1 or 2 days, like last year, and I was bummed. I missed out on that. I mean, I saw that in theaters when I was a little kid, but when you're a little kid, it's like, you don't have that many memories. I think I just remember about that movie like being like, did the Joker die at the end? Like, what happened? Is he going to come back? So.
Yeah, I saw that original film too in the theater. I was like 4, right? So I remember when Joker like electrocutes that dude and he turns into a skeleton. I was like creeped out.
Yeah. It was. I mean, that's what I mean though. Like, I think that these movies they weren't really thought of. Like, it's like, oh, it's like comic books are kids stuff. So if we make it's just kids stuff, and then you go see it as a kid, you're like, oh my god, I'm terrified beyond rational thought.
Oh, what's that black stuff coming out of Penguin's mouth?
Yeah. Oh man, that's scary. Or no, I'll tell you what. It was that, and then coupled with when Catwoman electrocutes Shrek at the end, and Batman pulls the thing up, and he's like a fried skeleton. I was like, oh, I'm sleeping tonight. Like, what is that about?
Oh my god, yeah, that was terrifying too.
Yeah. That was god dang, I remember that. And then like he killed like the Ice Prince, like all that kind of stuff. The Red Triangle Gang, like that was a creepy movie. The parents throw the penguin in the icy river. It's very just like, and that's the beginning. You're just like, this is gonna be an interesting movie. Yeah,
but it's funny because despite all that, that's still my favorite of like the first 4 Batman films.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a Christmas movie too.
Yeah.
You can you got a good Batman Christmas movie to watch.
Yeah, and of course it doesn't make sense that the Wayne Manor looks nothing like it did in the first film, but oh well.
Yeah,
we'll go with
Batman,
it.
Batman throws like a bunch of dynamite into a thing and kills a guy, but whatever.
Yeah, he sets people on fire with the Batmobile and.
Yeah. You had Frank Miller at the time. He was just telling everybody Batman's a jerk, so everyone just kind of accepted it.
Oh, funny. So yeah, then Batman and Robin came along, and kind of the same thing. Like I said, they carried forward Wayne Manor, but they also like, they do Batman his Batmobile for each of the films. So there was a new one for that film too, and I did have the Batmobile, which was a little different. It was more like a convertible, and it still looks cool, even though the movie sucks. It's still a cool looking Batmobile.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, and I tell people to stay. If I don't like an animated series, or if I don't like the movie, if you can make cool toys out of it, I mean, that's fantastic. That still piques my interest. So
yeah, totally. The figures were kind of the same. It was weird because there was the mainline Batman figure that was available single carded he didn't have a cape. Do you remember this?
I think so. I'm gonna have to look. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look this up then right now.
Because the only way that you could get like a movie accurate Batman from Batman and Robin was a mail away. Like you'd have to send off and like UPCs through something, and they would send you back, the figure from the film. But if you wanted to buy one like at the store, like he didn't come with a cape. It's like the weirdest thing ever.
That is weird, and like I miss mailaways. By the way, that was the people. I don't know why companies don't do more of that.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Like, that just goes to show you. Like, I mean, I didn't collect the line. I'm kind of glad I never did.
Yeah, I have some of the figures. I did buy them later on, as an adult, and I did buy the Batmobile again. So like, really, the only Batmobile I don't have is the Batman Forever Batmobile, which it's always been my goal to like, go back and get each one.
Yeah.
And even the animated series one, I don't know what happened to it. So I ended up getting one of the repaints they did like several years later of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, and that's always cool to like, you have these open-ended collections that you can, you see a good deal or you see something as you're kind of moving along during your day and you're just like, oh, I could totally add that to my, I do that on like a weekly basis. I'm just like, God, I can't go on, websites or, anything like that. Cause
yeah.
I see a good deal. And I'm like, I do need that figure. That would be a good one to add. Are you talking for the mail away? Was it the Fujifilm? Is that the one?
Yes.
Okay. I'm looking at that right now. That is really interesting. I mean, it looks like, what he looked like from Batman and Robin.
What's film?
Seriously, they're like, wait, you take it with your phone?
And it prints out pictures?
Yeah, I'm confused. VHS? What? Sometimes I met somebody not too long ago that had no idea what an N64 was. And I was like, how old are you?
Yeah, Donkey Kong 64.
Yeah. I'm just like, I mean, I guess if you didn't grow up with it, and then if you don't care, you'd never even know or, have any idea of what these things are.
Yeah, there were some good games on that one. Wasn't there also like the Star Wars Pod Racer?
Yeah, that was actually not a bad game. I liked Shadows of the Empire. That was, I mean, it was decent. It worked and it didn't work, and then Rogue Squadron and
Perfect Dark. That was a good one.
Yeah, GoldenEye. Hey, we're not talking about action figures, but that's a good '90s console right there.
Yeah. Oh gosh, now it's not. It's going beyond toys now. It's like all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we have to get back on track. The buzzer. It had a purpose.
It did. We need to pull it back into commission, especially as we approach 2 hours here.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'm sending you a picture real quick of the Batman mainline figure that didn't have the cape.
You know what? I remember that packaging like verbatim because they couldn't like sell them. They were always like stacked with that black and red packaging.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually it was like Poison Ivy and Bane and I think one of the Mr. Freezes because there was two of them. Yeah.
And there wasn't there like a transformation Robin, like he would like street clothes and you turn him into Robin or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember. There might have been
yeah. I don't remember. It was the ice skating goon. They had that from Batman and Robin.
Oh, jeez. All right, so let's bring the buzzer back in so we can get back on track here. All right, so I want to touch on briefly the X-Men line. It's getting late for anybody that's listening. We're approaching midnight here. Yeah, the X-Men line that was around in the mid-90s based off of the TV show, which who can forget that soundtrack for the opening scene of that show?
Every time I hear X-Men, that's all the voices are all I hear. The animated series like opening, that's the epitome of X-Men for me at least.
Yeah. And I didn't really have too many of the figures, so I did have 3 of them. I still have them. They're at my parents' house, and we still have the boxes somehow. But they're kind of like these more jumbo size, like maybe I don't even know what size they'd be, maybe like 7 or 8 inches. But
they're 10 inches. They were like the bigger ones.
Okay, yeah, 10 inches. So I have at my parents' house. I have Wolverine, Cyclops, and Sabretooth.
Oh, very cool. I get the bigger figures if it applied, like I have Apocalypse, so he would be, like in the animated series, he like one episode he like grew really big, and I remember I'm like no, I gotta get Apocalypse because he did that. I remember my dad, I'm like, don't you have him in like the small thing? I'm like, yeah, but it's like when he grows, I'm like, you know what I mean? He's like, no, I don't. You're weird.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good point, because you try explaining these things to your parents as a kid, and they're like, what?
Oh my God, yeah, that was like the best. Like some of the things my mom would, she'd try to call in to Target or something. She's like, I don't know. It's like, she's like looking at the back of like one of the cards. She's like, hey, it's like a purple green thing, and he's got like tubes, and people at Target were like, what? Like, I don't get paid enough to care about any of this.
Yeah, and that's one thing that hasn't changed over the years.
No. It's nice though. Once in a while, you get like some good workers, and they'll go in the back and search. But a lot of times they're like, "No, we don't got anything." I'm like, "You didn't even check your thing.
Yeah,
come on."
I don't even call anymore. I just I'm like, whatever. I'm just gonna go because yeah. And it's funny too, because sometimes you can be on hold for like the amount of time it would take you just to go to the store and check for yourself.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but did you have anything else from the X-Men line?
I was primarily like Spider-Man, the animated series, around this time when they were coming out, but I did get like the X-Men crossed over, once or twice with the like Spider-Man show. So I picked up like the core, X-Men, and then over the years I've kind of, gotten them, acquired them in some way, shape or form. But, man, they were always, like, you had Spider-Man, and then right next to him you had X-Men. And X-Men, like, just in, like I said before, like the number of different characters and obscure characters that they got into, maybe not from the beginning, but they went all out once they just, like, got their footing and just would pump these things out. There'd be exclusives here and, things you wouldn't even know, or there's no way you could know because there's no internet, So
Sure.
It was... For Spider-Man, and when again I've been doing like those Spider-Man the animated series like retro videos, it's like me explaining it was like this was where I was at the age of finally figuring out like what collecting meant and what it is, and doing research and trying to figure out what's out, what do I need to get. It was like when I was just getting into the core madness of collecting. Because at that time, parents or grandparents, you'd get them as gifts or something like that. You wouldn't have to do much. You're like, thanks, I'm just going to play with these now. But then once you got old enough, you're like, oh, I can do this myself, and I can plan this out and make lists. And
yeah, and when you get a car, you're like, oh, I can go around and look for toys now.
Oh, yeah, I totally remember. I remember that was like one of the first things my friends were like, you gonna come over? I'm like, yeah, but I'm gonna stop at Target. And they're like, what do you need? I'm like, don't worry about it. Like, it was just, I'll be over in a bit.
Yeah, I think I got a car. I think my first one was like I was a senior in high school, but on my way to school there was a Target and then there was a Walmart. So I would get leave the house a little bit early, and then I would swing by them, just scope things out, see what they had, and head off to school.
Yeah. And I was one of those, like, out of my friends and stuff, like, growing up, most of my friends were not toy people at all. So that was, like, my thing. I did it. It was my time. It's, like, almost to this day. But in having, created ToyShiz, that I've met so many, like, like-minded people that it's, like now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, my God, this is, like, a blast.
And that's, there goes our timer. All right, so let's see. What else do we have here? So I don't want to spend too long on... we need to mention Jurassic Park that Kenner did, and we'll combine it with The Lost World, because I know we're focusing on the toy lines that we never really, focus on the show, but
yeah,
it would be kind of incomplete if we didn't at least mention, how amazing the Jurassic Park toy line was.
Yeah, that was like that Kenner, sort of magic where it's like, how do we make toys based on this wild movie? You know what I mean? And it's like the answer is to outfit it, like get the characters all kind of beefed up, and then just outfit them with missiles and shooting nets, and have the dinosaurs having missing bones and blood, and
yeah.
Like that was cool.
Absolutely. Like the dinosaur toys in this line were unlike anything that, I had up at, as a kid. Like, I think the best things we had were like, do you remember the Imperial dinosaurs?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like the more like they didn't really move or do anything, right? They were just
they're
kind of
like rubber.
hollow plastic. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like rubber, and they were very generic looking, very retro looking. I think those were the best dinosaur toys I had, like up until Jurassic Park came along.
Yeah.
It just blew everything out of the water, like because I was really into dinosaurs as a kid, and we had a little tradition. Sometimes I go with my grandmother to like the flea markets and stuff, and we'd look for dinosaur toys.
Oh, cool.
But Jurassic Park came along, and I was like, I'm never picking up another one of these toys again because, these Jurassic Park dinosaurs are like the most amazing dinosaur toys like I had ever seen up to that point.
Yeah. No, they really were, and they, if as a kid, I remember my dad took me to go see Jurassic Park as a kid, and that was like the first time like I thought dinosaurs were awesome, and that was like the first time where I was like kind of terrified by dinosaurs. But the toys kind of like soften that blow a little bit, where it's like, these aren't really that scary. You know what I mean? Like you see people get like torn up, eaten, whatever else. But the toy line had that way of kind of like softening the blow. Like these are fun. It's a movie. You don't have to be scared by it.
Right.
And dinosaurs, they're not real. So
yeah, and I mean,
or they're not real anymore.
Yeah,
gotta be.
And I mean the toys themselves, and particularly the larger ones like the electronic T-Rex, the Triceratops, the young T-Rex. They're just very film accurate in their aesthetic, and like the colors are very detailed. They have the real feel skin. Some of them have the dino damage on them.
Yeah.
But then they also offered action figures, and the action figures were packed full of play value. You had accessories that they could use. They had like weapons. They had a dinosaur hatchling.
Yeah.
And even vehicles that you could interact with the figures. So I mean, it was a very well-rounded line that it wasn't like the biggest toy line, even when they got like to series 2 and stuff, but it had pretty much everything you would possibly need to recreate your own Jurassic Park.
Yeah. And talking about like that, like I think some of the most successful toy lines that people always seem to remember have like the core, like the very first wave of figures is perfect. Like it's the perfect ratio of like the heroes, the villains, and in whatever kind of capacity. And then you have the vehicles, then you have a play set, and that adds to that playability where you just keep building upon that. And that's really what I'd love to see more of. I think only in recent movie, kind of the new Jurassic Park, they have all these wonderful dinosaurs. They didn't do a play set yet, right?
Right. Not a proper one.
But the thing that I could think of most recently was the Into the Spider-Verse. They had like a play set, and it was kind of, I was like, oh, this is, and it's huge. Like it's all cardboard, but I just wish that more to continue movies instead of just being one and dones, like would get more like they used to do, like have vehicles, have this. And I love the Jeep from, the Legacy collection. I have that displayed right on my desk always. You got all 4 of the Jurassic Park characters in it now that
nice.
I hope they make more, but that's what I think I always wanted from just a Jurassic Park, is seeing the film accurate characters. And Kenner did their best, but like I said, they tried to beef it up and
right, of course,
make it more like superhero type, stuff for kids. But what they got going on now, like I was like, oh, that's what I've always wanted.
Totally. And every great toy line has an awesome play set, and the command compound that was available in this toy line is amazing. I mean, despite the fact that you look at it now and you press the buttons and it has like audio that sounds very like robotic or computerized.
Yeah.
At the time you never thought about that. It was just like, oh, this thing talks and it says, oh, Tyrannosaurus is attacking, or tropical storm is moving in, or just different things, and the light flashes, and you have you have the fences and the gate, and I mean it was just like, it was just pretty perfect. And I think for Lost World, they kind of carried through, just taking the same approach, with realistic dinosaurs. And action figures and, vehicles and all sorts of stuff, play sets.
Yeah. I liked, even after that, when they did the whole, like they went back to the lab and started making all the wild kind of dinosaurs. Like
Chaos Effect.
Yeah, that was cool. And even like looking back on that today, I'm like, why didn't I collect more of those? Like, you know what I mean? Like they're so wild. And I think as I've gotten older and in toys and stuff like that, like I've always wanted to see like more monsters or more. I think that's why I like the Aliens line so much. Like really interesting designed toys. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's what always, like the new Godzilla stuff that Jax is kind of doing. Like, give me monsters. Like, give me Jurassic Park toys. Stuff that's just wild.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's take a look here. We just have a few more lines to get through. All right, so let's talk about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Was that something you were ever into?
I remember that there was like one distinct story that I remember. It was with my grandfather, and he was a big collector of trains and things, and he kind of brought that at him. You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to collect? Or, you know what I mean? What are you into? And kind of we bonded over action figures and stuff because he'd take me to Toys R Us. And remember, he took me to Toys R Us one day because we saw in the Toys R Us ad that they had Power Rangers. He's like, oh, that's that show you like. I know you don't have any. I'm going to take you to Toys R Us. Let's go get some. We show up at Toys R Us, and there's a huge sign on the door, and it says, like, we are completely sold out of Power Rangers, something like that. I remember my grandfather going up to the manager, and it's like, you advertise this in the store. My grandson, like, had his heart set on a Power Ranger. You don't even have, like, you got to have one in the back. And that was, like, back in the day where you think, obviously you can't sell out of things. Who sells out of toys? But I think Power Rangers was one of those newer types of brands that wasn't Star Wars or something like that frickin' sold like no other. And I was all about Power Rangers for maybe like a year or two, or the first two seasons. Let's say they introduced like the White Ranger, and then it kind of turned into something else, and I just lost interest. So I always remember the core Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the villains, the evil space aliens, all that kind of stuff. And then as you kind of moved past that, I have no idea. Like even with the new Hasbro stuff, I was like, cool, there's Lord Zed and White Ranger, done. And then somebody's like, you gonna do the other ones? I'm like, there's a dog, and then like something called Dino Charge. I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it was the same thing for me. Like I watched maybe like the first two seasons of it, but then like after that, maybe three, but once when it was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I was like all in. But after it like changed to whatever the next one was, I don't even know what they're called anymore, but I just kind of like was like, this isn't for me. I mean, even at the point where it was out, like I was kind of getting to that age where you'd kind of get made fun of if you said, oh, I like Power Rangers. So
I agree. I think and it was funny because a lot of my friends, even the ones that didn't collect toys or weren't into toys, like they had Power Rangers stuff. And then you're right, it was like Power Rangers, and then it's like whatever. Like I think it was a big fad kind of thing. Like, what is this mysterious Japanese property? That. And it was funny because I was at a convention last year, and I met the voice that actually did Rita Repulsa.
Oh wow.
And I told her a story. I was like, I'm watching Power Rangers with my grandfather, and he's the one that pointed out, he's like, the lips don't even match to what this woman's saying or something like that. And she laughed. That's funny. I was like, yeah, he ruined it for me. So ever since then, I knew your voice was fake,
That's hilarious. What I remember fondly, I know there were like figures that like, there were like the morphing figures that, you would flip like the head and it'd be like the human head. Then you'd flip it around. It'd be like the helmeted head. And if you look at these now, the proportions on these things are atrocious. Even like,
oh, they're so bad. Yeah.
Even by like mid 90s standards though. I mean, they're terrible.
Well, and the girls were the same build as the guys.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, and Bandai brought these back a year or two ago.
Yeah.
They brought back like the retro packaging, kind of like Ninja Turtles did. And I have 3 of them, but then I guess that's around the time they decided they weren't going to continue with the license, and then they didn't finish the set. So. Yeah,
and the reason I didn't get them is because I still have my old ones, and I mean the plastic yellowed. I mean I actually like that because it's their mind. They show the age and stuff like that. But I remember, I think somebody did a review or something like that saying like, it didn't feel the same. You know what I mean? They used like a different kind of plastic. And I'm like, well, that's usually how it goes. But sure. I did pick up the Tyrannosaurus Rex that was kind of part of that, like the larger one, because that's when Jurassic Park was kind of re-hitting. And I was like, there's nothing to buy for Jurassic Park right now. I'm just going to buy this Tyrannosaurus Rex from Power Rangers, and that's closer to the dinosaur stuff. And
yeah,
that was a good figure. Yeah.
What I really remember also are like the Zords that they made, like the toys.
Yeah.
I know that I had so you for Thunder Megazord, was it Thunder? Yeah, Thunder Megazord. That was like the second one because I think the first one was like just like Megazord.
Megazord. Yeah. Or it was they changed it later to like the Dino Megazord or something that it was like that's the dinosaur variation of the Megazord. And I was like,
Dinozords
called,
or something.
Yeah, I was like, that's just called Megazord. They're like, no, they changed it.
Yeah. So it I remember having like the set because you needed all the Zords to create like Thunder Megazord, right?
Yeah.
Oh goodness. So you had to buy like for whatever reason the Red Rangers. I think you had the Dragon Zord. Like that was sold separately, but you would get all the other ones like in one box. Like it had all the other ones.
Yeah. I was going to say the Ninja. I had the Ninja Megazord. I think that's what it was called. You had the Lion, the Griffin.
Yeah.
Pterodactyl again. Yeah. And it combined, and it was cool. That was a cool figure.
Yeah.
And then I had the White Tiger Zord and the Dragon Zord. So
yeah, I never had the White Tiger Zord, but I did have the Zords that came by themselves, and my brother had the Dragon Zord. So whenever I wanted to like play, I was like, okay, hey, can I borrow your Dragon Zord? And it sucked because that was the only way that you could assemble the full thing. You had to buy that one separately, which to this day I think was kind of super annoying. But when Bandai brought that back a few years ago, they actually packed it all into one box. And I still have it here. I've never assembled it, but they did it as part of their legacy line. I think that's what it was called. And they're like die cast parts, and it's supposed to look all nice, but I've never put it together or anything because I don't really have room to put it anywhere right now. But yes, I mean that was kind of like the extent of buying like Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers. Around that time where the series kind of spun off into different things, I was like, okay, I think I'm good.
Yeah, and it's like if you remember correctly, like they kept changing like the core cast. They'd like write them off the show, and I felt like I'm like, if you don't have the guy playing the Jason and Billy and Zach and Trini and whoever else, Kimberly, when they changed the characters, it was like it lost my interest. I was like, this is weird. Like I'm not used to this as a kid. Like why are you switching the actors so many times? And Power Rangers was wild. But it definitely has that nostalgia for me in the sense of it's a Japanese weird thing that was brought over to America, like Pokemon for kids. I was too old for Pokemon, but I always attribute it like Pokemon was our version of it's the Power Rangers. So
sure, yeah, and obviously Hasbro has the license now, and they're bringing back these new Power Ranger 6-inch figures. Have you been collecting those?
Yes, they are amazing. They got me. I'm only getting Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Same.
So do whatever you want with Power Rangers, Hasbro. But if, you're only getting my Mighty Morphin bucks because I have no idea what the Shadow Dog Ranger is.
Exactly.
I mean, not to say they're not great figures, but I don't.
Right. Yeah, it's totally the same thing here. Like I have no interest in any of the others, and actually, I think I might need to exchange my Tommy because his hairline doesn't look very good.
Oh, really? Yeah, I've heard. I attribute to like the first batch problems. You know what I mean? I saw one guy, his eyes weren't painted. Looked like he was sleeping, like a sleeping Tommy. But the Wave 2, see, this is like the other thing I kind of like is like if I'm only going to collect the Mighty Morphin aspect, maybe they only have like 1 or 2 figures per wave, which is awesome. That way I don't have to buy and they don't have any Build-A-Figure pieces. Exactly. And so the next wave will have Kimberly. And I'm like, cool. I only have to get 1 from that wave.
Nice.
The rest is the obscure Power Ranger stuff.
Oh, that is super cool. All right, so let's go and move on to Independence Day. Now, this is one that, we'll spend a couple more minutes on it because it, I have a very big fondness for this toy line. So, Independence Day, I think, came out in 96, and I remember going to the theater. My dad and my brother, we saw it, and, I mean, I loved it. Like, I really loved this movie. Even now, like, I still really like it. I know a lot of people don't like it, but, I mean, I watch it, and I find it, like, highly entertaining.
I remember. Do you remember the trailer? They actually blew the White House or the Congress up, I think, in that trailer, and then they did the White House like just as it was about to explode or something like that, and people like lost their minds over that trailer. And I remember sitting there, and my parents and their friends and their kids, we all went and saw the movie together, and I remember people like cheering in the audience, like this was like the first blockbuster. Like people had ever seen, but it was totally wild.
Yeah, it was good. And the toy line, around this period, like 96, 97, I was really into like outer space and, aliens. I had these glow in the dark stars on my bedroom ceiling.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh my God, that's hilarious. I totally did.
I even did like constellations and, I think it was in 96, our school, we went to NASA, like for our field trip.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So we did that. And, I was just really into space. It's a long story, but I even, built like a satellite dish to try and communicate with extraterrestrials.
See, that's but you did it yourself. Like you talk to kids nowadays, they're like, oh, iPad. I watched the iPad. And it's like, oh, cool. I was building stuff to communicate with extraterrestrials. Like go outside.
yeah, totally. But so we had a grocery store in Texas. It's still there. It's called HEB. It's a statewide grocery store, and that was the first place where I actually saw the toys on shelf. And in the film, really you only see like one alien. They're like the grayish, like beige alien. And I think in this toy line they called him like the alien attacker pilot or something. Mm-hmm. But for the toys, they also did, it's kind of like Batman. They did the alien like in different colors. There was like a shock trooper, and he was like purple with like glitter on him. And then there was, I think it was like a scientist of some sort, like, and he was like a really like vibrant like blue coloration. Mm-hmm. And I guess I should note these were actually like the exoskeletons because the aliens actually went inside the heads.
Yeah, that was like a cool reveal. I remember in the movie when the thing like busts out and he's using the scientist guy to talk and everything. That was and the scientist guy survived in the next movie for some reason. But whatevs.
Oh yeah, that sequel was awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was such a great toy line because the figures, like these alien exoskeletons, were very detailed. Like the sculpts on them were very film accurate, and they had all the posable tentacles on them, and they had a couple at the back that you would use to prop them up, and then you had the little alien that it was supposed to go in like the head of the exoskeleton, but I remember them not really fitting too well.
Yeah, I remember that. The only one that fit perfectly was the giant like 12-inch. One, the electronic, where the face would open on its own and had like the sound effects from the movie. Yep. Did you ever have that one? Yeah, that was my favorite, and I still have that one to this day.
Yeah, I actually I think 2013 or so, I went back to eBay, and they're even to this day they're not very expensive on eBay, but I went back and bought like a bunch of them, and I did get that really big one. I didn't open. I think I opened one of them. I might have done a review on it, but the one issue I do recall with these is that the legs, if you look at them, they're just kind of standing on their tippy toes. Yeah. So the legs would warp over time, and then they couldn't stand anymore. Yeah.
No, I definitely remember that. It's funny you say tippy toes because they were like these little like huge massive bodies upstairs, and like these tiny little stick legs, and the way you could support them was through like the tentacles. Yeah,
and even those would bend.
Yeah,
yeah.
Those were, it was like a toy line that would have benefited from like clear plastic stands or something like that. But
totally.
I totally remember that they came with floppy disks.
Yes,
remember that?
they did.
Yeah, that and oh my god, I remember. I remember I had a couple of these figures, and I remember I had like 2 or 3 of the discs, but never had a computer to like put them on, because I think the only computer that I had was at school, and you can't bring, you weren't allowed to bring them to school or do anything. They'd be watching every movement. But
that's true. Isn't it funny how like the save button, like even to this day, like on any like application, is still like the floppy disk icon?
Yeah. That's
weird.
It made an impact.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember like trying one of these floppy disks on our home computer, and I don't know if I just didn't have like the settings right or what, but I could never get it to work. Like I could see like the screen of like the alien and the fighter, but like I couldn't press any of the buttons. And I remember
yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, and I've looked online like in recent years to see if I could find somebody like doing a video playing these games, and I can't find it anywhere.
Interesting. See, we're making a list here of things we got to do. We got to eat Dr. Dreadful poisonous food, and then we got to figure out Independence Day floppy disk data.
If we can find a computer that will actually use a floppy disk.
Right? God dang. It's almost getting to the point where you can find like something that even plays like discs, you know what I mean? Or, CD discs anymore. And
exactly. Like my iMac doesn't even have like a disk drive.
No, yeah, same here. God, we're old. Dang.
Yeah, but this line also had human action figures, which looked, not very much anything like the actors. It had some vehicles. There was like the alien like spaceship, which had like a mini alien pilot inside it.
Yeah, that was cool.
There was it like the F-16, I think?
Yeah, the plane, was it Will Smith plane that he flies in the Grand Canyon? Yeah.
Yeah, and then they had like a play set, right? But it wasn't like, these vehicles and like the play set weren't like scaled to like the figures. They were like kind of their own thing. No,
I think, and it's funny, like when you were talking about this earlier, and I kind of looked at the stuff again, I don't ever remember seeing the play set. Like that's something I need to find out more on, because I remember seeing the vehicles and I always remember seeing the figures, but the play set, that was like non-existent to me or something.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever saw it in stores, but I remember it clearly from like the card back, but I don't think I ever saw it in stores. But I still really like this line because I love the movie, and to this day, like those alien figures, they still look really cool. And the fact that they did these these aliens in like all these different colors, and it's pretty cool. I would like to do it one day where I set up a shelf and have each of the different ones like standing next to each other, because I think that would look pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's another thing that like it was a really cool movie, and I know a lot of people are like really like half and half on that. They're like, some people are like, it's the worst movie ever. I'm like, no, it's not. That's like, that was like the epitome of like stuff blowing up and the end of the world, and it was amazing. And the toy line like elevated that. You know what I mean? Like you had cool toys, even though they didn't go past like I think one wave. They were still interesting.
And that was like the height of like aliens in pop culture. Like I think you had Men in Black like a year or two later. You had the X-Files running up during this time, and UFO sightings were constantly on TV.
Yeah, the X-Files was awesome. I have that whole set from McFarlane, and like 2 weeks ago, I found the Mulder figure at a thrift store. It was like $2, and I bought it, and I did like a quick like show off, and I had a bunch of people say like, "Wow, like is this brand new?" And I'm like, "No, this is like." What, 97, 98, something like that? Like,
yeah.
Love the X-Files.
Totally.
Not the new X-Files, the old X-Files.
Yeah. I couldn't even finish that last season.
Nope. Oh my God. I was like, okay, well, this wasn't thought out.
Yeah, I think my favorite episode, you know how occasionally they would do like the comedic episodes.
I know exactly what you're going to say. Yeah, that was awesome.
Which one am I going to say?
The monster episode with the comedian guy, right? And
that's one of them. The other one I was thinking of was From Outer Space. It's kind of like a guy's writing like a book about like Mulder and Scully, but he changes their names, and He's like,
oh, okay.
He takes their accounts of what happened, and like Mulder goes into like a shop asking a guy about like if he, oh gosh, if he's ever experienced like missing time, and if he's ever seen a UFO, and he has to buy a slice of pie like for each question he asks. And
that's right.
Alex Trebek is in it, and yeah.
No, see, like when they had like really bizarre episodes, they really like did it well. But when they had the more like stretched out like alien aspect, like it started off good, and then it like by the time the movie hit, you were just like, what is this even about anymore? With the new stuff, I would have liked if they just rebooted it. Like here's a new like Agent and Mulder and Scully, and then just put a cap on that. I don't know why the Smoking Man came back. It's not very good.
It's silly. Anyway, my voice is really starting to go out here. I don't know about you, but
people listening are probably like, God, they're getting more hoarse as they keep talking.
So let's just blast through these last ones we have here. So,
sure.
You mentioned VR Troopers. What was VR Troopers? I don't remember that one too well.
VR Troopers was kind of like an answer to Power Rangers, you know, like they did like TMNT or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They had all those different like Street Sharks and Battletoads. Like I felt like Power Rangers opened the door for like VR Troopers and Big Bad Beetleborgs and, you know, things in that type of scenario and stuff. But it was one of those like kind of like short-lived things. They only had a few figures, like one wave. They did have vehicles and things like that. I only had a few of the figures, but they were pretty fun. Like they were pretty cool to have. And Kenner did them, and it was one of those things where they had strap-on armor and they had stuff that shot and clip-on stuff and
funny.
It was like an interesting line, and they were all like pre-posed. You couldn't they didn't have articulation at the elbows or legs or anything else like that. But I'm staring at one on my desk right now. I'm like, what else? What else can I say about this? But interesting, I think. Not the best of shows, not the best of things, but interesting designs. Very robotic, futuristic type stuff. So
yeah, sounds like it. Okay, so I also have Street Sharks on here. Now, I never had a Street Shark. I always wanted one, but I never actually got one. But these were pretty cool because they were like, as a kid, oh yeah, sharks. Who doesn't like sharks?
Yeah.
But they kind of looked kind of like muscular, didn't they? Like they were like these.
It was like, yeah. No, sorry, not to cut you off. No, it's like think of like a big shark face, and then they had like a little body to kind of go with it for the most part. But another one of those like weird turn animals into like extreme, kind of things. And they had, I mean, actually, it's kind of funny. They're actually really sought after, these days. Especially like the hand puppets that they had, which are kind of interesting. But not a lot of characters. This was kind of like a short-lived sort of deal. They had maybe like one or two like series, like the waves like kind of started out small, I think, or they had like a initial wave, and then they kind of did some repaints, and then I think they kind of used the characters again, but added stuff like one of the like repaints and like Hydro Batman, or what I mean, like it's just taking the same character and adding like punching gloves or something.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, they look cool even now. I think they look pretty cool.
Yeah,
they kind of remind me of. Do you remember like there was like a line of clothing called Maui and Son that was pretty popular in the 90s?
Yes,
and they had like a Sharkman character with sunglasses on.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of reminds me of that a bit.
That's a good like reference to that. That's like almost like spot on. That's pretty cool. It's like the genesis of the toy line right there.
Right. There was actually I saw it a couple years ago. Like somebody had found like a clip of like Vin Diesel like talking about Street Sharks like at a convention or something.
Oh no way! Really? That's funny.
I guess he was working for whatever company like made these, and he was like, when you go to like Comic-Con, you have people talking about the toy lines from like Mattel or whatever.
Oh yeah.
It was the same thing, but it was Vin Diesel like talking about the Street Sharks.
Huh. I could see Vin Diesel helming a Street Sharks movie. That would be that wouldn't be too far of a stretch for him.
I totally agree with that.
Throwing some rollerblades and extreme cars, a Sharkmobile. Yeah, that's got Vin Diesel
written all over it.
But no, these figures, like, I saw somebody's collection not too long ago, and it's one of those where you see them separate, but when you have them all together, they're actually like really cool, really interesting. And I'm sure all of us, like you said, you were in dinosaurs, space. Everyone's in sharks at some point. You know what I mean? And they actually kind of did go well with Ninja Turtles. You know what I mean? Like, that would actually be a cool crossover. Ninja Turtles meet the Street Sharks, something like that.
Yeah, because there's like Ninja Turtles and Batman now, isn't there?
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie. I know they're doing a SDCC exclusive. Like Michelangelo wearing the Batman.
Oh my God.
Costume, and I was like, somebody asked me like, are you gonna get it? And I said, no. I go, probably not, because if it's just gonna be like one figure, no. If it was maybe like a line, also I have to see the movie with those animated, straight to DVDs.
Yeah,
it's not always like the best thing. So
poor Batman. They're always putting him with these weird, like, in these different series. Like, wasn't he even with Scooby-Doo at one point?
Oh yeah. That's the thing though. It's like, that's an odd crossover to me. Like, I know they did the comics, fairly recently, but Batman and the Ninja Turtles, that's wild. I see Daredevil and the Ninja Turtles, but
yeah,
Batman and Ninja Turtles, yeah, I don't know. I'll wait to see the movie.
Okay, so we got to touch on Thai Beanie Babies, because this was like a huge part of the 90s.
Oh my God, yeah.
So Thai Beanie Babies began as, just these little, like, plushies, like they had like beans in them.
Beads or whatever, newspaper, Chinese newspaper, whatever they stuffed in them.
Yeah, and they had different ones that they started out with, like a series of like 12, or I don't know how many exactly, but somehow or another they became extremely popular, and people all over the place were buying them, collecting them. McDonald's picked them up as Happy Meal toys, and
oh my God, yeah, I remember that.
It was a huge craze, and people were, I remember, like, because several people in my family were collecting them, including myself. But like even like my aunts and my like adults were collecting them, and we'd go to like the Hallmark store like super early in the morning to try and grab like the latest Beanie Baby, and yeah, it was a wild thing. Like, I mean, everybody was into Beanie Babies back then.
I remember people in my family, yeah, they collect. So, like, I mean, like as a kid, I'm collecting like action figures, and I'm like, will they help me, find, toys? So I remember like going with my mom or, another family member or something like that, going to look for stuff. And I do remember, like, was it Princess Diana died? They had the Princess Diana bear.
Yep.
And, oh man, I'm trying to think like what I was in the store, like asking for people. Because yeah, you're right. Like everybody in some way, shape or form had one or collected them or something like that. And lots of people collect them to this day. They're called Funko Pops. No, but yeah, everyone's just like, all right, that's enough. No, it was an interesting trend, and I feel like everybody in their attic or basement somewhere has a garbage bag full of them.
Yep, same here.
Yeah. I'm sure there's one up in my parents' attic somewhere. That's and the little tags, like everybody, they put little plastic like protectors over the tie heart and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember I actually kind of got back into them like around 2007, 2008 because they ended up at Tuesday morning stores, and you would go in and you just find a bunch of old Beanie Babies, like older ones. And I don't know where they came from. Like, I guess they just overproduced and they sat in some warehouse for a number of years, and then they trickled it out through Tuesday morning. So I started buying them again. They were only like $3 each or something. And Yeah, during that time, I remember it was one of the first like toy things I bought on the internet. I bought the tag like protectors like from this website that was like all about Beanie Babies, and I think I probably put them on some of the figures, but I never actually put them on all the figures, or you know, I don't think you can call them figures. But I just kind of got bored with it, so I turned my attention elsewhere. And now, yeah, they're totally in a trash bag out in the garage.
Yeah, it just goes like you go back one day after years of not seeing them, and you're just like, oh yeah, I totally remember doing that. You know, even stuff that I have like put away. There's actually a lot of figures I want to get out that I have put away, but you know, you forget about them, and you're like, oh my god, yeah, I totally collected that. That's wild.
Oh yeah. All right, so last but not least, Star Wars came back in 1995, and
yes,
so this was a big deal because Star Wars had been on ice for about a decade in terms of action figures and toys. So, you know, people that had grown up, you know, the Star Wars trilogy, the originals were slightly before my time, but it was big enough of a thing, and you know, when they came back in 95, that even I was aware of, and you know, I had enjoyed watching, like, you know, the films. I was old enough to know what Star Wars was, and you know, I really liked seeing like the toys, and I remember thinking, well, you know, I could get into this, you know. So I remember like with you know, some birthday money or something, buying like the Star Wars trilogy on VHS, and then I was like, okay, so I like this character, I like that character, and you know, I would just start going to the store and, you know, using like, you know, little bits of money I'd get here and there and start buying figures.
Yeah. Same with me. The Star Wars, the original trilogy came out like just like before my time, and you know, basically I had everything we just talked about in this podcast, and then when Star Wars came out again for the, you know, Power of the Force, and then into you know, the re-releases of the movies, yeah, I got really like, that's when my Star Wars knowledge like picked up, and you know, started to really get moving, and I loved everything about it. I was like that, you know, the Star Wars nerd of the friends, you know, and everything else, and could tell you everything about anything just because of these action figures.
Yeah.
And God, you know, and not having anybody to really tell you about Star Wars, it was like the precursor to, like, you know, finding out like, what's this character's name, or you'd get the carrying case, the C-3PO talking one, and it had character names that I didn't know who they were yet. And I was like, oh man, I got to find out who this like Ponda Baba is, and whoever else nowadays is like, it's a household name, of course, Ponda Baba. No, but no, it was, yeah, exactly. They was a lot of fun to collect. I still have like, god dang, so many of them, and the play sets, the vehicles, like everything was awesome, and they all fit inside perfectly.
Yep.
And, yeah, that was the way, I think, to get kids playing with toys, was to have so many interconnected things. You could throw, you know, the TIE fighter pilots and the giant TIE fighters. You had Luke's land speeder, which is still like one of my favorite things. Then the black series, when they redid it and stuff, like that was like the first thing I got. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it was a pretty expansive line. Like, it started off very well rounded, and you know, the main figures, the main vehicles, and then it quickly exploded when they realized that everybody was buying them. Yeah. So, and of course, early on they had like He-Man, Luke Skywalker, and you know, they were all like muscular and.
Yeah, I remember that. Like, even as a kid, like I didn't really think too much about it, and then, you know, couple, you know, years into the line, you know, someone was like, yeah, like we're all like roided out. I was like, oh, that's like totally makes sense. Yeah, like, I mean, they were like, I remember Luke Skywalker, it looked like he was like busting out of his white tunic, you know what I mean? Yep. And Boba Fett was all ripped, and Han Solo was like the worst. He was huge, and so was poor Princess Leia. But
yeah, even Chewbacca.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah, it was an interesting time for the toy line, but you know, obviously that it's come back, like, you know, kickstarted like these past, like, you know, 20 plus years of constant, nonstop Star Wars action figures and toys. So,
yeah, and you know what? To be honest with you, I mean, they have so many properties coming up and everything. I don't see Star Wars ever ending. I mean, I could see people dropping off, coming back, but I think it's going to be a continuous thing for quite some time.
Yeah.
Especially with everything they've just announced recently. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I'm sure that there are some lines that we probably forgot about. And, obviously, we've been going for 2.5 hours. I think this is the longest, Cantina Chatter episode I've ever done, honestly.
Really? I had fun, though. This has been, like bringing back, a lot of things I haven't thought about in years and years. So thank you for that. That was a lot of fun. I'm interested to see when you play this back and me being like, oh, my God, did I get that wrong? Is that true? Because, what time? It's almost 12:30. Yeah, we've been talking for 2.5 hours. I'm just it's probably mush just coming out of my mouth at this point. So
yeah, no, I totally hear you there. And like I said early on, we're mostly going off of our memories and our nostalgia for this stuff. So yeah, it's possible I'm sure it's very likely we got a few details off here and there, but
I'm sure
that's okay though, because we're obviously, we have a huge passion for toys, and it all started with all these toy lines we've been talking about. And, we have lots of fond memories for collecting these lines. And I'm sure it's, because of all these old toy lines that we're still doing what we're doing to this day.
I think so. Yeah. And it's also, I always attribute it, people ask all the time, how do you keep all this stuff straight? I'm I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying half the time. There are so many things that I know useless information about. You know what I mean? It's just one day it's Spider-Man, the other day it's X-Files, now it's X-Men. It's yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're a wealth of useless knowledge, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I could teach a whole college course on nothing. You know what I mean? This will be on the test. Remember that
Street Sharks.
Street Sharks had Slamoo and Streaks. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
But no, thank you for having me on. I hope everyone listening had a good time. I hope you're all still there. They're why are these people still talking? God.
Yeah, they're okay. Yeah.
They don't have lives.
Yeah, no, it's really been a blast. And, again, thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure chatting and taking a stroll down memory lane, because as I noted when I was talking about this show on social media, I was saying, we're coming for your nostalgia. We're going to hit you in the nostalgia. So be ready for that. And I think we did a pretty good job covering all of these toy lines.
Yeah. And a challenge to everyone out there. If you want to buy a Dr. Dreadful set and cook it and eat it, let me know how that goes. I didn't tell you to actually do it, but if you want to try it,
Yeah. Hopefully they'll still be around to tell you how it went.
Yeah, it's local podcast induces several deaths upon Dr. Dreadful deaths.
I mean, it's in the name, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you're rolling the dice on that one. And then also the Independence Day floppy disks. If anybody knows what actually was on those, please let us know, because I have to know now.
Please send us a link if anybody knows of any footage of what these discs look like, because I don't think I'm ever going to find out on my own at this point. So, yeah, we definitely want to know that. And, ToyShiz, it's been a blast. My voice has become kind of scratchy and feels sore. And I think as soon as we're done here, I'm going to go grab a throat drop.
There we go.
And, it's but you know what? It's totally been worth it.
Totally. Thank you so much. This has been a blast.
If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, be sure to rate Cantina Chatter and leave a review. If you're so inclined, Victoria's Cantina is on Patreon. To gain greater access to Victoria's Cantina and help keep the lights on, be sure to hit that link in the show notes. You can also follow us on Facebook by searching for Victoria's Cantina, Instagram @Victoria's Cantina, and Twitter @VixCantina. As always, thank you for tuning in to the Cantina Chatter Podcast.